And we're live. I'm Anthony Johnson, founder of the 21 Convention and 21 Studios, here with Socrates, one of our alumni keynote speakers and alumni speaker, period. You've
Period.
spoken
Yeah, yeah.
many times over.
Yep,
Yep.
multiple.
This
This
is,
point, I can't even count.
yeah, I don't even know either. Yeah,
I'd have to look it
four or
up.
five or something like that, maybe six. So this is a surprise podcast we're doing. I did not announce this beforehand, but now it's live on Facebook and Twitter and
Yep.
YouTube and stuff, so we'll pick up some viewers. And as soon as we're done, it'll publish to them right away, like regular video.
Yeah, this is killing two birds with one stone.
Yep.
It's like it's my time for the weekend to end and kind of get with you
Yeah,
and
yeah.
talk and hash a bunch of shit out that I kind of really enjoy and kind of get replugged into stuff and broadcast that out. So we've been talking about this for a while.
Yep.
So
Yeah, I just did one with Rollo Tomasi as well remotely
Yep.
recently. That went really well.
I
People
need
going.
to watch that one.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
on my list, but the work last week was so heinous that there was no way I could actually get any sort
What's
of
cool
podcast.
is his fans are seeing it and our fans too, and our guys are really liking it. Which is it got like 100% up likes for a while.
To be
which
honest,
is-
I've always been surprised that there wasn't more crossover previous to this.
Yeah,
I mean, even when I was in the community, you sit down and go, there almost was two running current veins on a lot of the stuff. So it's kind of nice to see those worlds finally coming together and becoming aware of each other.
Let's get into that more in a second.
Okay.
Just so you guys are aware too, we'll actually see the chat right here live. So anything you guys say, I'll actually see. So yeah, thanks for commenting and stuff. Oh, one guy's already asking if Sock does private coaching.
Hold on, we gotta get the focus here.
It'll pick back up. That's fine. Yeah. So we'll get into this later, the questions, but anything you guys want to know or talk about, just hit us up in the chat, and we'll see it there live. So you mentioned the crossover or lack thereof between like, well, you mentioned we're talking about Rollo and stuff, but you probably mean more so like PUA and like Red Pill.
PUA and Red Pill, yeah. And even in the community, there was a kind of a real disconnect between guys that were primarily focusing on picking up women, that was their sole single focus, and they were terribly dedicated. And I don't mean to disparage that at all. I really don't. For guys that are completely transforming their lives, and in many cases being very poorly prepared socially to go out and engage in individuals, not just women, but to actually increase their standards of what they expect of themselves and their social situations, and putting themselves out there in a community of others. Where there's going to be a lot of criticism, and it was kind of a harsh environment. Let's be honest. I mean, it was not a whole lot of holds were barred on that. Not necessarily mean, occasionally, or maybe a snark, but on the whole, you're putting yourself out there in a public way. And one of the things that was required was you actually had to put good faith effort into it. You weren't allowed to just keyboard jockey. You were required to put out field reports and everything else, and really come back as a journal and discuss what you did and why. So it was less what you really think should be happening and more about what the world's really occurring. And, the private man discussed his idea of the Red Pill wasn't just in game and pickup. His version of Red Pill, in a lot of ways, and having had that discussion with him, was Red Pill was seeing the world not as the way you would like it to be or the way it should be, but to realize that this is the way the world is, and you're going to have to deal with this.
Whether you like it or not.
Whether you like it or not. And a lot of people want to hide from that. And that's a terribly normal, I would say, a very protectionist response to take. Because a lot of reviews may become in conflict. Not only that, it's a very harsh reality. And it's very easy to crash and burn, and to put yourself out there, crash and burn, crash and burn, crash and burn, and just continually pick yourself up and say, what lessons can I draw from this? Was really powerful. Knowing that, there was a lot of the guys that were doing pickup and straight game. And God, it was kind of fun to be around, but that wasn't what drew me in.
Yeah, Matisse was a good example.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, unbelievable results. I mean, just you could describe it, but it's nothing like seeing it.
Actually, I asked him recently, a few weeks ago, I talked to him what his leg count was. And he said, I don't know. I lost count at 300.
Yeah.
That was in 2011.
Yeah, right. That was years
That was
back.
That's over half a decade ago.
Yep. But it didn't improve his quality of his life.
I agree.
And that's and that would be something I'm not just saying in privacy. It would be something I would actually tell him in person. How horrible to go through all this process to throw yourself at a particular thing, and fundamentally not be transformed for the better towards the end of it or during the process of it. And so that's where a lot of the Red Pill stuff, and particularly for me, and I think a lot of the older guys, because we're older, we're educated, we had jobs, we had professions. I was drawn upon other elements other than just pickup, and leveraging, trying to understand more of that, not just sort of like, hey, you can just claw some chick and caveman her ass and walk out of a
you
place.
mentioned being older, and I heard a quote just yesterday, I think it was. I think you like a lot. Old men are often wise because everything that's tried to kill you thus far has failed.
Yeah, that's pretty much. You can be old and beaten, but I don't quite see myself
or stuck in your ways.
Or stuck in your ways. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Which is with Andrew you mentioned as well. He found the red pill and the whole
very
community.
late in life.
47, I think.
47, almost 50.
Yep.
And talk about changing his worldview.
Yeah.
And so I've always found those kind of individuals remarkable. I was drawn to him specifically for that.
Okay.
Because a lot of times, a lot of things I was reading in the community was really young guys like Ortiz, young, good looking, had access to
fucking me.
Yeah, and that's a whole nother story.
Everyone off.
And you're just like, oh my God, and how do you kind of relate with this? Other than you're going through the same experience.
Well, it's mutual. That's why I started the under 21 convention. Is like, I recognize that you guys were good. You were older than me. You're better than me. And or at least you had the motivation to also do this. In a lot of cases, Patrick was a good example of someone who I thought I saw him in the field. I was like, this guy's definitely better than me.
Yeah.
But he was so much older. I was like, how the fuck can he even relate to this? Like, it's a different class of person.
Well, and the reality is you relate by putting your dues in.
Yeah.
You put yourself out there, you do it, you be honest about it. You don't necessarily wear a chip on your shoulder, but there's an element of swagger to that.
Yeah.
And like any social group, you provide value. And don't try to command attention, but provide value. And so, and then within our community, there was a really very fortuitous group, and it was unique. And we heard that from a lot of the coaches that were coming in and visiting, that were swinging through town. And they would say these things, and you kind of like hear it, but you don't quite realize how connected we were. You had a mentorship program, guys like Patrick or Tim, or
right hand man.
Sorry about that. That was a slip.
Oh shit!
What did we lose?
No, we're still live.
Okay.
I hit the fuck did I just? Hang on a second.
I heard it click.
Yeah, I hit the fucking first. Idiot. My bad.
I thought it for a minute was your knee, and I'm like, oh,
no. Oh, I know, right?
And I'm like,
it sounded like that could have been it. Let's get the we'll get the camera back in a second. Hang on, guys.
There you go.
Yeah, we're good. I turned off the fucking power to the TV.
Oh, you hit the totally.
Yeah. I think we're good. We didn't lose the stream because it's on my laptop.
Not perfect. So, but there was this element of mentorship as part of that process. If you're willing to learn, and what we saw was that there was a lot of guys that were putting themselves out there genuinely. They were putting the time in. They were throwing themselves out there, writing reports like you. That got a reputation as nobody works harder at this.
Yeah.
And there were guys that more senior that really were putting the effort in. And for them to sit down and, in all honesty, sit down and go, no, you were putting the effort in, day out, and throwing yourself at this. It's commemorable. It really is. So you kind of had all that going on, but at the same time, what you end up finding now is that a lot of the pickup coaches and the coaches that we saw that were commercial at the time were trying things, and they would try things and it would work, or they would refine it until it did work. But they didn't have a unifying theory as to why these sort of things would work. So it was kind of a one-off, one hit, or a product launch or whatever it was. And then you go, where do you go from here? Well, then they have to reinvent the wheel all over again, as opposed to kind of understanding human nature and having that, evolutionary biology approach to it, and combined with where are you at today culturally. And where those two kind of meet and blend, you can then sort of draw upon endlessly from that era, where they cross over. And the firms and individuals who really, I think, excelled kind of tapped into that. Even today, I think there's a lot of coaches that will look at Red Pill and be really put off by it. And I'm always still surprised, but I
they have like a tepid kind of approach to it. Like RSD is, I think, like this. Owen apparently has read The Rational Male and he likes it. Okay. But then RSD is not, they're not really advocating that. They're advocating something else.
Yeah, and it's difference between reading something and embracing something. Like I can read Karl Marx. I'm not going to be moved to change my life to become a socialist, at a drop of a hat, just because I read Karl Marx. You kind of have to understand it. You have to kind of believe in it. And like a lot of things, it's not going to be for everybody. And in many cases, the red pill analogy with the Matrix was really kind of an apt one. With the red pill or blue pill, and those are just symbols of, do you want to stay cocooned, or are you willing to view the world as it is, so you could thrive better? Now,
take the plunge.
And the kind of the horrifying one is, I want to say it's Cyrus, the bald character.
Yeah, they call him the purple pill.
The purple pill.
He's a perfect example of it.
Here's a guy who chose a red pill, put himself out there, chose a red pill, swallowed the red pill, and when it came time to having seen everything the red pill had to offer, really wanted to go back and be cocooned. And I think, again, that's really human nature too. And that kind of is almost the transition between young adult and teenagers transitioning to young, truly young adult. And the difference is who matures through it. An adult, particularly males, have to view the world as it is if you're going to truly succeed as a man. Or embrace the blue pill and somehow to kind of work through that dynamic. And of course, I'm not particularly interested, so I'm not going to speak on that. But the guys that are in between are getting murdered in so many ways.
Well, Rolo's thing actually in that is that's actually the most dangerous position to be in.
It absolutely is.
It's the purple that's dangerous. I think his theory is, I'm not speaking for him, but I think his theory is in that position, that's where you get a lot of guys committing suicide. Because they apply red pill truths, the ones they kind of pick and choose, cherry pick, but then they hold on to the blue pill kind of illusions.
Correct.
And then when you combine these two, you have a very dangerous concoction that can kill you.
In blue pill, in a lot of ways, may also be guys that is white knighting, a lot of that sort of stuff. And it's not just dangerous to the individual; they're dangerous to society on a whole.
Okay.
You look at all the for example, the Tampa talk. I actually spoke about the one individual that actually went out and shot and stabbed a bunch of individuals who clearly had gone through some boot camps with pickup artists, understood red pill.
You mean Elliot Rodgers?
Yes, I did.
Yep.
Okay. And so here you have an individual who then was still very resentful, and then became immensely angry at everything.
Yep.
And up to the point that whether it was stable to begin with or not, then took action to kind of rectify that. And and I don't mean rectify it in a positive sense. This is a child who decided to quit playing the game and wreck the board set.
Yep.
By going out and murdering people.
And you made the point too that even if he was mentally healthy before the fact, I'm not saying he was, these actions still would have been possible to him.
Absolutely.
And I agree.
Yeah. And you do find people who are angry, and it's very, very easy to get angry when you load up any number of these facts, whether it's manosphere information, that sort of thing. And kind of seeing the world as it is, it's very easy to kind of dive into that and not get out and end up being very angry.
This brings me an interesting point too. Someone mentioned the marrying Medusa talk, talking about Medusa. One of the things that the red pill made me realize is that, and one of the most consistent comments I got at the convention from guys who attended in person and then after the fact who saw it, was they're recognizing these behaviors that Medusa did in women from their lives.
Right.
But they always were like, I don't think she's a psychopath though. A lot of the behaviors are similar.
Well, in the degree of narcissism, sociopathy, and any of the pathologies that are involved, it's not just one. It's not a black or white. It's not.
It's a spectrum.
It's a spectrum.
Yep.
And women on a whole, society's pushing that spectrum and allowing that spectrum, so that you're seeing these disproportionately from what normal functioning behavior should be for society. And so it's not uncommon to see some of this played out. Yep. It's not uncommon to find women who cheat on spouses or partners or whatever.
Cheating is common.
Cheating is common. Whatever it is, and I can give you instance after instance, or looking after their best interest.
Just go on Reddit.
In straight ways. The thing I talk about is hypogamy or hypogamy being the male version of hypergamy.
Okay.
Is that most women don't understand that they have a hypergamous nature, and so they're not taught to control that. Normally, that's where religion and societies and families stepped in to kind of mitigate that. But when you have,
by that you mean too, they're not, they don't want to be consciously aware of it. They're suppressing awareness.
Now they're actively suppressing. But in many cases, it was the father's role to develop an adult. Some of our speakers have spoken about that before.
Okay.
A mother's nature is to raise a child, and it is a father's duty to raise the adult. And when you remove father from the equation, these lessons aren't taught. Yep. And we see it played out in a number of ways. We know communities. You look at cultures that have.
Well, I mean, fathers are needed anyways. There's
just
excess anyways.
Well, we'll see about that. How's that working? And I can point to any number of social markers. That
I think how it's working is that it's a single parent household. I think is the number one indicator of like violent crime, being in prison.
In many ways, a single mother household, not single parent.
Which is when
single
you
mother.
So
let's be real specific.
I agree, but exactly that's the point where you cross now from a little bit politically incorrect to way politically incorrect.
But then I'll take a step forward. Not only is it geared towards single mothers, hey, there's a major failure here.
Yeah.
If you really look at it, there's no other way to describe this than being a crime factory.
Yeah.
You are allocating in most instances, not all. There's a lot of elements at play, but you are literally promoting these sort of malfeasance social issues.
Yep.
The other is you're doing tremendous damage to your child, and for the individual who's supposed to be most care and protecting of their children, the most empathetic, there's very little empathy going to their children. And, I've got a friend right now who's kind of going through a divorce, and I'm speaking with the spouse who's pushing for the divorce. And it's just amazing kind of hearing some of the stuff that takes place, the reasonings, the rationales.
Oh, you see these girls on Tinder all the time, or Bumble.
Well, that's even worse. That's even worse. And
the most important thing to me in the world is my children.
And that was like a red flag for me, that immediately, like when I was single and I would go out on a date or meetups, and I say date, it was really kind of, hey, let's just meet up. And it was one of those things I was looking for ways in which to discount and get these people out of my life as fast as possible. And so one of the questions is, you hear that, okay, I'm divorced, your kids, hey, tell me about that, and it's all, in all fairness, they wanted to know why I was a single bachelor for 30 years, and by rights, they really should know. And I can explain it. I can talk about a lot of things, and there were some probably red flags for a lot of them, and there should be. But at the same time, they never saw themselves as being, this is an issue. And sit down and say, for somebody who is looking for family or going towards that direction, you're showing out all the red flags. Is that, why would I invest in you when you've already proven yourself an absolute failure, and there's no sense of empathy, self-awareness, or agency taking place? And when you don't have those three factors, you're to blame. And in many cases, they were very, very direct in blaming their ex. I wasn't happy. He didn't fulfill me.
Happy? You mean happy?
Yeah, all that. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm miserable.
Yeah, and you ask the simple question: was who's responsible for that? And then they get really defensive. And of course, the dates are already over.
Well, it's never her fault.
No. How dare you?
How dare you?
It's like, well, are you strong, independent? Are you autonomous? Are you self-actuated?
Well, let's get into this. So you brought up something the other day that I thought was really cool, and you said that hyper agency, so hyper responsibility, is a form of white knighting.
Yeah,
and that was kind of mind blowing for me. I was like, damn, that's so accurate, because I've been aware of both these issues.
It's a form of extremism that I like the general idea to kind of motivate people, because most people don't take full responsibility. I can.
So you mean by that, you mean taking ownership?
Ownership of what's happening. This is where I'm at. I can complain. I can do a lot of things, but ultimately, I'm in that situation because I created a life that's my.
It's
reality.
a result of the decisions I made.
Yeah, and across the board. But then there's individuals who have gone way beyond that. Is that they take ownership of absolutely everything.
Everything they get their hands on.
Yes, absolutely. And it's interesting is they never applied, or at least the elements they kind of couch it, but it's implied. But the part that gets delivered is always the agency where women are concerned. And so that kind of is really alarming, is that you don't hear him saying, hey, I take this measure of agency across my business, my education, my place in life, my fitness, my health, what I'm doing with my life. But invariably, it immediately goes to protecting and promoting a woman's interest at extreme levels. And you'll hear it coined or phrased in a number of different ways. And I just find that it's a tell that something's out of whack here. Something's very much out of whack. And without wanting to throw a whole lot of sense, part of me then steps back and goes, okay, the first thing is watch what people are promoting. They're typically the antithesis of, or they've exhibited that. So, for example, you'll hear me constantly talk about virtue these days. Yeah. Straight out, because I was not a virtuous dude in a number of ways.
A lot of people don't realize
that. No. And I try to be very honest because a lot of what I'm doing is making amends to myself and the individuals I harmed.
Well, the same thing might be true then with relationships.
Correct.
Like Krauser was very critical of you. Let's get into
Krauser.
Let's get into that. He got back to me through email. I talked to him a little bit.
Really? No shit. Because to be really honest, it was something that popped up. I was thrilled that somebody actually that I knew and recognized. I wouldn't say a peer because I wasn't at his level, and obviously a lot of things he was doing. And in many ways, he was critical about some of the things he was doing. Sometimes he was complimentary on it, but on the whole, I think the overall picture is really pretty critical about it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have somebody at that level and in position responding to something I did.
Yeah.
And you sit down and go, what as an architect, what a fantastic critique. You have kind of a setup, you present it, you throw it out there. How does your audience respond? And you have somebody at that level clearly articulating in very, in some great ways, some some fantastic feedback.
Yep.
And in many cases, I tend to agree.
Yeah.
And the fact that
I told him that too, and I think
how much time he spent. I mean, it's like, really? Okay, but tell you what, can I get him to review some more or whatever else?
Yeah.
And it's like, it was only a one-time thing as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I was grateful for the feedback and the fact
well, one-time thing, but he extended it not just to your talk and the ideas there, but he extrapolated that to mean the whole convention.
Okay.
So he started attacking the
that was a whole nother.
Recently, this is recently too. So
really?
not only then, but he went on Rollo's blog.
Really? See, I haven't followed other than the first talk I did.
Yeah, he apparently saw me. He almost met me, I guess, or maybe we met in London back in 2011.
And that would not make, surprise me at all.
So he spoke at an event where I technically spoke at, but just like the end of the event for like 5 minutes. So I helped Andy put on the Dig In Blueprint.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And at the end, we had the convention, the 21 convention, like a week later. So I was like, hey guys, if you want to come to this event, here it is. Here's tickets. Get you guys a discount. And then he was basically now saying on Rollo's blog that I was a speaker at this event, talking about game and shit. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, so he really dug into the convention too, from back then, just from that. Well, later on that talk you gave.
No, I think it would be an outstanding coach to actually have come down and talk. I mean, and this is a guy who
I'm not opposed to it.
Not only sits down and has comes some ideas and everything else, puts himself out there.
Yeah.
In a very and in that particular time, I think he was. There was some recording. I don't know how much he wants me to go into any of that, or but you sit down and go, this is a guy who, instead of telling you, hey, I did this and I did this, and there was kind of this faulty memory, or you kind of try to relive things, but you're doing it through your lens. You're able to listen to the audio. Of him talking to these women, or the approach, and the subtle nuances of, kind of bringing that level of technology into coaching and awareness, and seeing is believing again. And here he's using the internet and technology to record that. So I didn't have to be wherever he was at in the world to actually physically witness what was taking place.
I never saw this video that apparently went viral or something. I've never seen this one from Krauser. It's an infield video.
No,
right?
he had several. I mean, it was more than just one.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it was like multiple. So here's a guy who would post a, let's say a field report for all purposes, that would then have the content. Here's me narrating, and and then not only that, he kind of marked it out the time so you could jump through it and listen to it.
Holy shit!
And you sit there,
it's like wiretap.
Yeah, no, really, but it really was. But it's it's all in a public venue, and so there was no him hiding kind of the results. You literally hear the inflection, you can hear it, and there's a couple times where you're listening to it, and you're listening to to verbal cues of like, when is she really digging it? When is she all of a sudden that switch from, hey, this is kind of a cool guy, or I'm kind of what's going on here, to all of a sudden she's really in the moment with him, and he's putting that out there. And talk about fantastic as far as leading the industry down that road.
Yeah.
Now, where he and I differ is where our objectives are. He clearly wants to live a single lifestyle, travel the world for a number of different reasons, and bed gorgeous, international women.
He's pretty clear about that. Like, he's
without
not,
a doubt.
he does not pussyfoot around that.
Without a doubt. I've always been more relationship centric. I've always been wanting to improve the relationships, and I have a tremendous.
Well, how long has that been true? I feel like that's more in your 40s.
Yeah, and interesting enough, I got into this because I actually wanted to improve the relationship I was in, and I also wanted to reconstruct some of the most successful periods of my life. Was when I threw myself wholeheartedly in a group situation with other guys, whether I was competitively swimming in high school, whether I was in the military, or when I was in architecture school. 3 major events in my life in which I kind of threw myself at a course of action with a bunch of peers that were going through the same thing. And you picked each other up. There's this camaraderie. And so I went out with the intention of reconstructing that. Now, it happened to center around pickup in women. I happened to be in Orlando, coming from Washington, D.C. So, instead of jumping in and grabbing a $20 cab fare across town to go to another bar, or, 2 or 3 in one location, I've got 75 within a quarter mile of my house. There was always something going on. And you just sit and go, if you're, instead of just sitting at a bar drinking, all right, play with this, see where this goes. In the meantime, you're chasing ass. And what, as a single dude, what can be more fun than that? It's like, I could sit home and play video games with my bulldog. I could throw $100 a month at cable TV, and the bars are still open and real people are interacting. And so consequently, I was downtown and living downtown. And so, that's what I ended up doing. And you then find all sorts of other things. And what you really kind of figure out fairly quickly is the relationship I was in was really doomed from the start.
Yep.
Chose the wrong person, followed up on the wrong person.
I've seen the idea that if you find pickup or red pill or anything like that because you're in a current relationship, you need to end it immediately. The fact that you're even looking,
but you're not. You're not. Nobody does.
Yeah,
I don't know anybody does.
Yeah.
And ultimately it did. And so there, up to a point, I couldn't really throw myself at it. And because you're in a relationship or you change the dynamics and not behave virtuously, and say, hey, yeah, we're together, and while in the meantime I'm going out with the boys, misbehaving and banging other chicks.
Yep.
Not necessarily the coolest thing to do. And so you kind of got to live with those consequences. And to be really honest, it wasn't worth the effort. The relationship ended horribly anyways. So you just
most do.
Yeah, and this one was spectacular, but yeah, it was pretty.
I have some familiar.
Yeah. No, and to be fair, it was not your end, but I didn't walk out as a net positive. I was carrying tremendous debt in the end.
Okay.
There was a horse involved that you just sort of write off. She wrecked a truck.
I don't know how literal that is.
And no, very literal. Yeah, actually very literal. No joke.
I don't know if that's like a metaphor.
No. I bought a horse for this chicken, and you say, "Oh, Jesus Christ, what the fuck are you doing?" No, that wasn't the big one. No, the then was the $300 a month maintaining this fucker for 4 years. While I wasn't seeing her, while she was with somebody else, I'm still paying on this fucking horse. And it's certain, because I had this white knight simplex of, you made the promise, you follow through.
Yeah.
Well, the reality was she completely renegotiated that deal. And when you renegotiate that deal, you don't renegotiate at a minor level, and it doesn't transcend everything. When you renegotiate, it's for the whole fucking pie.
Yep.
And it took me a very, very long time to kind of come to terms with that. You kind of hold on to it mutually for an investment, and that was generally the term. And then you realize we're going into a recession, and you're like, no, daddy's got to punch the fuck out, So you do. We did end that amicably. I ended up giving her the horse straight out, no cost, no, just it's your responsibility.
Of all the white knighting stories, I've never heard a horse involved before.
I had a horse. I had a pickup truck. Pickup truck that I loved, a little sporty, Ford Ranger. I fucking really loved, worked it to death. Okay. You knew me when I had the Vespa. Because she destroyed it.
It's still around, isn't it?
No, it got stolen and trashed. Actually, we got it back, but it got totally trashed.
Okay.
They fucked it really bad. But yeah, the issue is not only that, she destroyed a truck, and so there goes that, and on top of everything else, and $600,000 in real estate debt, because I was investing very, very heavily, inappropriately. One in my dreams, but the other was this was very much attached, and that's still ongoing. That very much affects my life today.
Yeah.
So
let's get into some other topics. So we really went down a couple rabbit holes here.
Yeah, sorry, we knew we were. I don't think we cleared the first subject actually.
We got about another 25 minutes or so, and then we gotta hop off. So let's talk about the 2017 event.
Yeah,
we just put out tickets. We're absolutely fucking killing it.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Thanks to a few key speakers, and that was really great. Anybody who does not have your ticket yet, you can get it in the description box underneath the video, or the card at the top right-hand side of the video, which should be like here, maybe over there. One of these two at the top.
In all honesty, if I wasn't speaking, I would still want to go for the full for it.
Of course.
Full days. I mean, you just sit down and go, this is going to be an event.
Yep.
It's an experience. They always are. And I'm, in this particular year, known as the 10-year event. Most firms and businesses don't last.
That's what's cool about it is not only is it the 10-year anniversary, which is already a big fucking deal. It's 10 years of the company, 10 years of the events. It's the 14th 21 convention we've done.
Really?
Proud to say.
I didn't know that many.
Yeah, that many.
That is awesome.
And that's with 2 years off. I took off 2013 and 2015.
Damn.
So even considering 2 years off, we still hit over 10 in its 10-year span.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
But not only that, it's like a red pill invasion, as I kind of call it. Rollo calls it like a red pill summit.
Yeah,
and he's correct, which wasn't the intent when I started building it. I was putting it together. Just
and to be honest, I don't really see it as a red pill event. I think that you're tapping into something, and I think it's giving particular lifeblood in a number of ways to a lot of the ideas. It's one of those I think synergizes really well. With everything you've been doing.
Well, like I was telling you before we hopped on the podcast here. I'm very polarizing and antagonizing as it is. So finding these guys that are like hard hitters on the truth,
right? Yeah,
it's like most people would think with a conference, be reluctant to have these guys on board, but with me, I'm like rolling out the red carpet, like right this way, sir.
Yeah. Your seats,
Rollo,
your
Christian
table,
McQueen,
your table's already prepared.
Goldman, totally.
And to be honest, I'm actually really excited to see some of these guys.
Me too.
So because I've read a lot of them, I know who they are, and never had a chance to meet. And so it's going to be really nice.
Well, most of them are. I mean, Rollo in particular has been very hard to meet. He's only done one public appearance before, and that was 2015, and that was not recorded, only audio.
Well, I found it was interesting. He was actually in this town. And when we
know,
were doing that, and so there was always in the back of your head, you never know when you're going to come across these people. And because I've actually come across some of the famous people that we know before I actually was kind of involved myself. So you go, oh my God, that was so.
Well, with Rollo, for all you know, you did run into him.
Yeah, I very well could have.
I mean,
absolutely, very well could have.
You want to remember?
Yeah, right, absolutely right. Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah. So yeah, it's going to be really kind of interesting,
When it's funny when we actually had a phone call a little while ago. I thought it was when I first talked to him on the phone. I actually thought it was like a gym calling me or something. I didn't get Gold or it was Gold's Gym or LA Fitness kept hitting me up for like getting to come in and buy shit or buy a membership, and I was like, how the fuck is this? And it was him. And I was like, oh shit, because his area code's still from around here.
Okay.
So anyway, though, yeah, it's I'm excited as shit to have the Red Pill guys at the event.
Yeah, it's going to be a real nice dynamic. Yep. It's going to be a real nice dynamic.
Yeah, you make a good point too that the convention is bigger than just Red Pill. Right. We have a lot of different movements and like ideas.
It's bigger than involved. Red Pill. It's bigger than Pickup. It's philosophy. I know in many cases you've had financial people come in and talk about.
We have two this year.
Yeah, fantastic. Yep. Health and nutrition, particularly in nutrition, and then exercise, sports science, those sort of things. Guys that are doing cutting edge research and development and looking at it and literally wearing the results.
I don't know if you follow this guy, Patrick does, but there's a commenter on Rollo's blog named Yeah Really, and he actually left a great comment about the convention on Rollo's blog years ago. It was basically, Rollo had just spoken at the Man in Demand conference, and then this guy Yeah Really was like, hey, you should check out the 21 convention. It's not necessarily Red Pill, but they have like all these fucking badass speakers showing up. And nobody paid attention to this comment, but now that it's a thing, Rollo's looking back at it
and realizing, but that's like a lot of times you get information, and if you're not prepared for it or in situated, it blows right back, and you go back and kind of like, oh my God, why didn't I see this before?
Well, that was like me finding, I found the Red Pill years ago because they love Nick Sparks, some of his talks. They would post links to it and James Marshall and shit. And I'd see the traffic and I'd see the subreddit. And I would look at it and they go, cool, these guys love the video. And I didn't really think anything of it. And I've seen Rollo's blog back in 2015. Krauser I didn't know of, but a few of these guys I was familiar with. But now, because Nick Cloud introduced me to the Red Pill in detail, it's like, holy shit, what did I miss?
What happened? Yeah, it just kind of opens a lot of doors. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he pulled back the curtain for me, and it was
Yeah, and it's been there the whole time.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, that's kind of crazy. In a lot of cases, you'll do that, and then you'll walk around your hometown. You'll see things differently. You'll see relationships you have differently. And that can be alarming. And in many cases, those relationships change. And you can't carry those friends forward because your lifestyles have dramatically changed. And you saw that in, like, for example, in the Lair, where a lot of the guys who are really kind of into it try to convince their friends to do it. And it was always kind of a mistake. If they're not finding it themselves, they're not going to value it necessarily. And in many cases, they'll be very much apoplectically opposed to it. And so you just have to realize that your relationships are changing, and that's not going to be compatible, and you have to be comfortable with that. In a lot of cases, a lot of people want to go back to the blue pill because of it. And I've seen that. Others, I've seen kind of really mortifying elements where it's not relationships you can give up or change. It's relationships with parents. In many cases, and I see things like for my own development or my own mother, I sit and I go,
oh yeah, you mentioned a couple comments.
Christ, are you out of your mind? That's the worst advice you could give me. Not only that, do you hear yourself? You're taking somebody else's position and promoting it over your own.
Well, what's crazy is when she does that, even as your own mother or your sister or whatever, they're well intentioned.
Yeah, absolutely well intentioned.
But it still sucks
ass. And
even
when you bring it up, you're taking it wrong. No, really, let's lay this out here. And that can be very difficult. And in many cases, I know particularly with men's rights issues that can be a really alarming. And you want to get angry because in many cases damage was done, not intentionally. And then you have to sit down and say, okay, how do I handle this going forward? And that can be immensely difficult to work through. It's challenging. In many cases, you have to take a step back and go, they're going to be who they are. I'm not going to be able to change them. Even if I could, would I want them to feel that kind of guilt and remorse? Or would I naturally then go and say, hey, no, protect somebody I love? And so a lot of cases you don't have to bring it to that. But at the same time, doesn't mean I have to take the advice. Just because it's somebody I love, desperately love, and desperately means, well, doesn't mean I have to own their advice, because when you take it, it's yours.
Yep.
And you have no right to complain. And that's a major switch. So a lot of times I'll
That's actually
talk to my folks. And
that's an issue I actually thought of a lot back in 2016. Throughout most, not recently 2017, but 2016. Towards the end of the Medusa relationship, I started taking advice right in the final like 3-4 weeks, in a way that I normally wouldn't. Right? Normally, I just reject people's advice, left and right. Like I'm really good at doing that, just saying "fuck off," "thank you," "fuck off." And for one of the first times in my life, I stopped doing that, and I don't regret it because I learned a shit ton in the process. But I look back on it now, and I'm like, yeah, only half of that was good, and the other half was bad. And my filter got lower at that point because I was stressed the fuck out with what was going on.
Yep. Energy level.
Even people I trust, people, friends, and all kinds of people. Yep. So it's just interesting to look back on that and think like, well, yeah, some advice you get's good and some's not, but you ultimately own it. The minute you take it, it's yours, and for better and for worse. And that could easily go. It can go either way very quickly.
And it's one of those things I'll say. I try not to give advice, and I'll turn right around and do just that.
You mean prescriptive stuff?
Yeah, prescription. Yeah. But I try to. But again, this isn't something I do on a profession, so it's not something I'm constantly working. Yeah. But you try to, allow people to see what's in front of them, give them a different perspective if they're not seeing what you're seeing, because you are by nature not standing in their shoes. You're going to have a different perspective on it, and at least put that forward. In some cases, I think even with you, I told you need to get out of the house now.
Oh yeah.
I mean, without a doubt. There were times when
get out. Greg was the same way too. He was like, get out, run, get out. And my brain too was like, run. Something's terribly fucking wrong.
And the other thing is, I could tell you to get out, but in many cases, you sit down and say you have to provide a solution. Really, get out. I've got a place for you.
Yeah, you didn't.
And then allow whatever to take place.
Yeah.
But knowing that you were in a very, very toxic situation, which you're going to be predisposed to kind of bond back inappropriately and being taken advantage of. I want to make sure that didn't occur.
Well, it's something. There's a former FBI agent named Joe Navarro, I think is his name. Okay. He's written a lot of books on body language and dangerous personalities. He has a book called Dangerous Personalities, actually. And one of his key pieces of advice in spotting disordered individuals is to trust your gut. Okay. And the minute your brain or your gut, it's like this feeling, it's telling you to fucking run, you need to listen. Which ultimately I did, and thanks to other people around me, that definitely happened very quickly. But a lot of people I think would not. And I think had I not developed into the person I am by that point, I might not have run.
Oh, a lot of guys. No. Absolutely. Are you kidding? Look at what you were stacked against. Not only did you have biology in which, sex, you're supposed to bond. And
dopamine, oxytocin.
All those chemical things. You have the addiction. All of a sudden, that's going away. You have your day-to-day patterns of behavior, all that sort of stability elements. And then you have her.
And then a business too.
And a business and everything else. And then you look at one of the major things that she applied, continuously, was her sexuality.
Oh yeah.
And
one trick pony.
And that's always one of the triggers you say when you see somebody, doing that. It's a sign that they're working on that rather than virtuous traits.
Yep.
And so you start looking for what are the virtuous traits? Are they truly being empathetic? Do they know how to have self-restraint? Are they looking long-term on a relationship, how to maintain and manage that? Do they know how to manage a relationship? All those sort of traits that are actually really hard to learn.
Yeah.
But going and getting Botox, getting your lips done, getting tits done, learning to suck cock better, doing porn, all those sort of things, getting over your gag reflex, all these things she had no problem telling you straight up. And not only that, but she would tell us. It's like, and so that
you mean at the end or throughout or something?
Here and there, or just something, in teasing or whatever the hell it was, I never met a woman I didn't like that didn't have, or that didn't have a lack of a gag reflex, and while it may be floated out as a joke, what makes it stick is it's real.
It's real, and where did it come from?
And where's it come from, right? And so you've got all these sort of things coming, in play, and it's like, God, are you shitting me? That's a lot of gravitational pull to break free of.
Yep.
And you were able to do that in short order. Yep. And in part, I would say is the situation that you're in, but for the vast majority of it, it was who you were and who you worked to be, so that when that time came, unknown to you and everyone else, you were in a position to be able to make that move. And you also had a network that supported you because of it. So,
exactly. That was
absolutely
I
remarkable.
focused on realizing that a lot last year. Really appreciating that. Yeah.
Well, in let's play the 21 convention right now for it.
Yeah.
You know, everybody showing up at this convention for the most part will not know each other.
Yep.
But they're going to meet other guys and form a bond over the next, that course of 4 days or 5 days, whatever it's going to be.
4.5.
4.5. In evenings, and they have similar interests. They're doing something, and many of these guys are going to stay in contact and maintain those relationships, and they're going to have a network to kind of fall back on of people they trust.
Yep.
And that is incredibly important. And by the way, we're not selling that as a ticket. That's a side benefit.
It's a side benefit, and it's important, and it's rare.
It's incredibly rare. Particularly, we don't have a culture of men.
Yeah.
And so we talk about Repeal.
The future is female.
Yeah, they say no, it's really not. It's going to be for a hot fucking minute, and that 2-year divorce frame is going to be quick. We talk about the French elections that happened.
Yeah, I know. Marine Le Pen just lost.
Everyone's saying France.
I was with her. I don't know what happened.
To be really honest, I wasn't a real Le Pen fan, only because she's a socialist. France is fucked to begin with. I don't care. You get this measure of socialism or this central, but the fact was she was a nationalist.
I was with her because she seemed to be very much like Trump, and that she was not part of the establishment in that country. The globalists hated her, Angela Merkel hated her.
Absolutely.
The whole European Union fucking hated her guts.
And in that regard,
perfect.
And as a nationalist,
it's not immaculate, but it's perfect.
Without major flaw. Yeah,
without major flaw. It's sufficient.
And so you see that and go, okay, France has gone through worse. And the reality is, in many cases, France is socialist because of the German invasion. And the underground network that was established was essentially communist to begin with, because they had to go underground to survive in France during the pre-war period. And so that they capitalized on that network to develop the resistance. Well, it's no surprise that all these countries that had that sort of communist underground resistance prior to the war, during the war, survived, and that they were then in power or in a position to seize power because they had that network established right after the war. No major surprise. But what we can say is that France is going to see a lot more violence, and it's going to be one way until it's not. And when it's not, it's going to be very, very nasty. And it's going to be nationalism tied with racism, amongst any number of things. And it's going to be particularly ugly.
So basically you're saying that by Le Pen not winning and the problem not being addressed now, the can's going to kick down the road until it blows up in their face.
And it always gets worse. It always gets worse.
Unlike in Britain, where they took action.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they did. Yeah, in many ways. And I'm not saying that they're going to go through, learning trials and errors and some difficulties, but they're going to be vastly better off. They actually have a degree of control for themselves. As much as you can have when you have a government overseeing. That
makes you wonder how much their geography once again helped them, being an island.
Without a doubt, it formed kind of part of that national culture.
Yep.
But then again, so is Ireland.
Yeah.
And kind of look at that, but they've always been buffered against the rest of the world by England, violated by, so there's a lot of politics involved. But ultimately, I think people are capable, intelligent people are able to make their own choices appropriately. The problem is that, you start looking at demographics of IQ and cultures, where IQs are suppressed because of behavior and cultural impositions.
Oh man, I was watching Joe Rogan a little while ago.
It can be really ugly.
Apparently, I don't know if I'm quoting this exactly right, but it's supposedly, and this was on Joe Rogan's show, and he was stunned. He was like, no fucking way. And they were pulling up websites on it and shit.
Yeah, I know the one.
So there's a lot of inbreeding apparently in Muslim countries.
And
it's substantially higher statistically.
It's tribal, in many cases. And so within a tribe, there's only so much gene spreading you can do. And there's a number of reasons for it. And
a lot of
I don't
want
this
like first cousins and shit.
And I don't want to necessarily jump on it from that standpoint. But the reality is that when you don't have free economies, free market, you're not promoting the best of yourselves. You're repressing that. And so you get a culture that's repressing itself. And so,
you get a gene pool that's repressing itself.
And as a consequence, you get a gene pool that represses itself. Now, we joke that you sit down and say life's difficult when you're stupid. And it is, it could be really challenging if you're stupid.
Yep.
The problem is that it's even more challenging in a democracy. A democracy, requires a certain measure of intelligence and capability. It's just not somebody just going and voting. And we're even seeing that in the U.S.
Oh, you mean like Thomas Jefferson used to comment on this, that, the public needs to be educated and knowledgeable.
Yeah. And one of the reasons why you have a class system where people, non-landowners didn't have a right to vote because they had no investment in the vote outcome.
Yep.
And that's an issue. And it's also an issue when you have people that are voting and they don't have skin in the game and they're not particularly intelligent because you're enabling that behavior or failed culture. And when you see political parties promoting elements of feminism that then promotes lack of fathers and communities. I think there were several talks where they talk about the Black community being a canary for the United States. Is if you want to see where things are going, take a look.
I've heard this before,
And look at what's happened when you remove fathers from that culture.
Yeah, and that's specifically what you're addressing. That it's
absolutely.
Fathers and same parents.
Yes, absolutely. And so, all these sort of things interplay, and I think it can be a very, very dangerous time. And this will come to a head. It will come to a head one way or another. And you look at it, it's unfortunate. I had some friends that are, for example, I used to do some couch surfing, believe it or not, a lot of hosting.
Okay.
And they had gone to Paris and France previously. They went back fairly recently and they were absolutely stunned. And they were saying that it was constantly, they felt like it was a security state because everybody was alarmed. Everybody was watching everything else. This idea that you could, as a woman, grab a shawl and go down and walk a Paris street in the middle of the night and still feel like you're in a Western world and kind of window shop and see the lights and glitters. She goes, they did not leave their compound as far as the hotel and the areas that they were at, even pre-dark, dusk.
Wow.
They just felt that threatened. And in many cases were physically accosted even during the daylight. They were just repulsed. And they go, it's not the same place. Yep. And that's over the course of 3 or 4 years.
Damn.
I wonder about
Sweden. I went to Sweden back in 2010 for the convention we had there in Stockholm.
Yep.
And I'm thinking about it now. I'm like, who the fuck knows what it'll be in 5 years? I'm sure it's substantially different from what I was there.
Well, you're starting to have firebombs. You're starting to have arson starting taking place. Yep. So you're already having people throw Molotov cocktails at mosques. You start to have the no-go zones areas being. For example, policemen are not allowed to take public transportation into work in Sweden.
I've not heard of this.
Oh, yeah. No, I hear these kids, because you kind of have an ear to the ground, you kind of listen. They're not allowed to do it because of they know they're at risk. They have to arrive into, in many cases, they have to go to another station and then be transported into a group that goes and actually polices the no-go zone area.
Wow.
And so you go, that's a combat zone then.
Yeah.
Okay. And so.
Well, it's a euphemism. It's a euphemism for a compound.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And so then you have, the rise of militarized police force.
Yep.
And when you can't tell the difference between, a frontline infantry battalion and the police force, there's really something wrong. Yep. That's not a healthy state of a society.
We're running out of time, so I think we should move on to some more interesting topics we have listed out here.
Get me off of that one.
So, just briefly, a minute or two. You have a new book you're working on.
I am.
It's one you've been working on for a while.
It's one I've been working on.
Nearing completion.
That it is. Essentially, what it is I'm taking the Tampa talk, in which I talk about the personal map
from the 2014 21 convention.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I take the essence of that, and I'm writing more content for it, and still presenting the information. Because I know people are going to find the book, or they're going to find the blog that I was writing that I kind of put on hold. They're going to find the videos, but there's a whole gamut of people that actually go searching for information, not via the blog or anything else, but by books.
Yeah.
And so I kind of always wanted to do that. My first go at it, it's been terribly start and stop. Tremendous amount of time, but I'm getting near completion on that one. And of course, once you get the first one out, it's like I'm talking.
Well, I'm sure you should send a copy to Krauser when.
To be really honest, if I ever made them, to be really honest, I probably would. And what I almost kind of fear is that he would have the same comments regardless.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it was his use, the word use that I kind of use overly verbose words or educated words when a more simpler one can do. And he's absolutely right on that.
Roller gets the same comments.
Yeah,
they call them $10 words or something.
Yeah, $10. And sometimes I'm like, I'm okay with that. And so you sit there and go, okay, I hear the comment, I hear it, I can understand it, maybe I consider it, but at the same time, I don't particularly want to water down my personality or some of the things I think about to do that.
Oh, there's a lot more comments.
A lot more. Wow.
Oh, shit.
Damn.
Sorry, guys. The comments got cut off there for a minute. We are back. We'll hit into these in just a second. Can you go a little bit over 8, or you got to leave right at 8?
I can go over 8. We're having a good time.
All right.
We'll go until I'm done here.
All right. I got more to fill you up here if we need.
Oh, actually, no. Where's that bottle? I told you.
So let's get into one more topic before we take. Guys, we're gonna take viewer questions in just a minute. But one more topic I wanted to hit was kind of friction of the alumni speakers. Some of them have gotten very upset by the Repeal stuff.
Okay.
Versus the new speakers, who are obviously not upset because they're part of the new group.
And they don't have the connection.
And by that I
kind
mean
of background on the convention. But to be honest, I would sit down and say for a lot of the speakers, there's always been kind of some of the conflict. There. And one of the things I really loved about the 21 convention is you can have two guys on stage giving information that they thoroughly believe in, really kind of disagree.
Oh yeah.
And you have that, and unless you're kind of really tuned in, you wouldn't know about it.
I heard two of the fitness guys in Miami. I was working on my speech.
David
Landau and Ted Rice were going, or somebody were going at it. And Drew Bay is like off to the side, like
off to the side.
Were you on this panel?
Yeah, I was on that panel, and I was on the far side. I was to their left.
So this is not even pickup related or anything.
No, it's not pickup. This is fitness on the power of exercise and what is defined and their belief on it.
Yep.
And it's not necessarily. It's one of the rare cases, kind of being an outsider. I could see both sides. Where you sit down and have somebody who's a pure saying, you exercise this muscle for this. And I can also hear somebody else saying there's this more holistic approach, what it does to the overall body and everything else. And in your sense of living, command of your body, that's very different. And I know I've done that, for example, I would sit down and say there's something very different from doing a mechanical exercise on an OmniArc machine or a weight machine, doing an exercise as opposed to picking up a kettlebell.
Okay. Yeah.
And whether or not one is actually really better than another, for at a certain point for me, that kind of gets lost in the detail. What am I most likely to enjoy and then would bring me back again, whether that's absolute results or my enjoyment of the exercise, because God knows I just need to do 98% of it and I'll get the benefits. The last 2% we're really kind of doing that bell curve of, that real narrow area.
Yep.
The other is that a lot of this stuff becomes kind of religion.
Oh yeah.
And so you see some of that.
Well, even the high intensity training guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Back in the 90s, I think 2000s, they were called the Hit Jedi.
Right.
Because it was like a religion to them.
Yeah, without a doubt.
A religion I think is fantastic, but religious.
You have that, and then you have the same guys that maybe agree on the exercise component, but completely disagree nutritionally.
Oh yeah, totally.
And so you see that play too. So that there's kind of two big examples within one subject matter. That's interesting. Philosophy, you have Ayn Rand guys, and then you have guys who, like for example, Greg Swan, who I really enjoy. Know more about some of these other things and has been very much influenced by her teachings, everything. Very open about it, but vehemently opposed to some of the things they're doing based on a philosophical position. And so you have that going on at the same time. And so that's not the only time you had conflict.
It makes me realize sometimes. I was thinking about this a few weeks ago. That diversity is this fucking buzzword today used for fucking everything, right? And it's abused to the point of just being meaningless a lot of the time, or it means like horrible shit, like you're oversaturating something with too much bullshit. But at the convention, I think we have real diversity. We have a real open debate about real issues, and we have some badass speakers that always bring something useful to the table. Even if you don't agree with it.
And for example, I think one of the classics we talk about is I had conflict with somebody.
Okay.
Dealing with feminism, and I'm an anti.
Oh yeah, James Marshall.
Yeah, James Marshall. Yeah, totally.
This is well known.
And I like James Marshall. I really do. I mean, I really do.
Me too.
And he did something that was completely unique, being a feminist and being in that position, in that mind frame, and presenting that information. He did something up until that point no feminist had ever done. He had a dialogue. He listened. Whether he was, or he heard, and I'll say he listened. He was empathetic, whether he was going through the motions or anything else. And you talk about acknowledging somebody and giving validation to them.
I think there's two components to this. I think it's a reflection on him, and it's a reflection,
without a doubt,
and it's a reflection of the venue.
Without
the environment you guys are, both of you guys were in for that to happen.
Absolutely. So in that regard, here you sit down and say, I have vehement opposition, not only to feminism, but the one or two steps beyond.
You should have seen all the disclaimers I put on this video.
I
was like, this does not represent our views.
But at the same time, I would have absolutely no qualms whatsoever, whether inviting him to my house during the event or anytime he goes, hey, I'm in town, and I would without a doubt say, hey, if you're available, come have dinner with the family. If I were to send the boys out for particular coaching to sit down and say, you need to see the world, and here's a company or a group that you sit down and say, fine, they're in Prague, you need to get the hell out of the house for 2 weeks and get your European experience on. Without a doubt, send them to those guys. And I'm not disparaging any of the other pickup artists or dating coaches that I know, but I think there's something to be said about having that lifestyle of setting himself up a particular way and delivering on it. And without a doubt, he does it in a remarkable, successful way. That's virtuous. There's no hiding. It's no kind of, hiding, I'm doing this, but I'm not really telling you. No, he's very upfront about it, and he's marketed himself that way. And women are making a conscious choice. I'm choosing that. How do you criticize that? You criticize it when he doesn't choose you again and again and again.
Well, we can criticize it when he goes. I criticize him, and we might actually do something on YouTube at some point about this mutually, me and him, or beyond that too. But I criticize speaker particularly when they go off the reservation, so to speak.
Okay.
So they exit.
Stay in your lane.
So that's staying. Yeah, that's what happened. That was the big disagreement we had. Is I viewed that as going off his lane, way out of his league, off his lane. Other people didn't, but I vehemently pushed that his expertise was specific to seduction and dating and pickup. Going into social cultural issues that big was beyond what I
would say it was not even so much their lane, because I know other speakers have done it as well, but you knew it in advance. You have somebody come in and talk about fatherhood and raising children, as opposed to what they're normally doing with weight training.
No, it's in advance.
You know it in advance. So I think that kind of took everybody by surprise.
Yeah, I was surprised as anyone else. Exactly.
And so you have this kind of element of feedback, pushback, that there's real conflict, some strife, but it doesn't carry over into people being ugly, rude, disrespectful. I don't even remember if there was any booing or
Greg was losing it.
I
had to pull Greg outside. I was keeping an eye on you. Is he gonna is he gonna tackle James on stage?
On the whole, that his speech wasn't interrupted by it. That he may have gotten some initial blowback right during that time. I don't recall.
I was worried it was going to be, and I was determined to keep it going.
And you've always been there, and so that is something I find really remarkable. So it's not just sort of one thought process, like you're going only for this. You're going to see a spread of ideas,
exactly.
and they may not always align. And again, but educated individuals, we demand that you kind of pick up the information that's relevant to you, that you own at that point, and you take it forward.
Well, I think what happens too on an open platform like that, there isn't actually a lot of deliberate or direct debate going on, but there's debate going on between the speeches.
Right. Yes.
And I think what happens is that the best ideas went out, because it's an open platform, and then that platform is protected so that ideas can get out.
Right.
And then everyone can judge independently what the fuck they're looking at.
And there isn't that open debate. And so I wouldn't want to necessarily see, a panel in which people were actively debating or arguing or presenting.
Yeah, I've never really dreamed that up. That's
and I know a lot of people.
It could be fun.
Yeah, it could be. But
it's worth experimenting.
That's why we go out to the bar and talk, and then you see that, and that's a whole nother thing when you sit down in a lounge or something where everyone's gathered together and you start talking ideas.
If we ever
have those discussions, you really do. They do take place.
If we ever do any debates like that, they would be not in the convention room. They'd be in a podcast style this. Maybe like you and Greg did with Steve.
And to be honest, that may be an interesting podcast. Actually, have somebody like Steve interview two people who kind of have that, and then discuss that.
Yeah.
And for example, we talked about a number of issues. You had a panel where they were kind of discussing that openly.
Yeah, it happens organically.
Yeah, it happens organically.
I don't have a problem with that.
And to put that, I think there would be some real value added to that.
Okay. Yeah.
In that regard, I would see it, but.
I'll call corporate and see
let them know. Just put my 2 cents in.
Corporate. This is corporate.
Yeah, and so you see my involvement with this, right? We talk and come up with ideas. What do we got?
Let's go through some questions. We'll take some questions, guys. Me and him are just riffing here. Right at the bottom, I see that James Marshall's speech is one of the most viewed 21 convention videos in history. I don't think so. I mean, it's got 95,000 views or so, which is pretty good.
He's got some really good hits, but as far as the number, that goes to Nick.
Well, it goes to Nick. But James Marshall has other speeches that are way beyond that. He has 2 speeches north of 300,000. So his most popular talks are not the one that was related to feminism.
Right.
In fact, his talk on feminism from the Tampa event is, I think, one of the most disliked videos on the channel, and it's his most disliked video, period, on our channel out of his set of we have probably 30 videos or 40 videos of him or something like that. His videos are unanimously positive, and that one just fucking hits the.
And I'm not objective here. I mean, I can't sit down and say, yeah, more views is better because my numbers are incredibly low.
Well, the likes versus dislikes also reflect YouTube in general.
Right.
It's not just our channel. The video exists on all of YouTube.
Yep.
And YouTube is like constantly getting, and I think it's good, but kind of like alternative media, new media that pushes hard against feminism.
Expose,
they blast this shit. So.
And that's in part because they're also a business. So that they have a brand and awareness and a marketing venture out there where, for example, somebody like me where I'm just putting the information out there. I don't have any corporate elements involved, other than the book that will be coming out. Hell, I don't even really honestly coach. And so it's a completely.
That's why I call you a relationship philosopher, is because you're focused on the issues, like, period.
Well, and it's that, but it's also because I've gained so much for free from individuals like the community, whether it's that or other people in my life. I felt a moral need to kind of give back and to kind of provide in return. In a number of ways, and so that still goes on. The other is my personality type. I'm a licensed architect for a reason, because I wanted to change the world. I wanted to leave an impact. I could sit down and say I do some great work. You've seen some of it. But I would sit down and say some of the best work I've ever done is.
Well, I've lived in it.
And there's some of not only the house, but some of the best work was my involvement with you during that time period, and other guys who had similar issues in their lives, big and small. So I used to sit down and say I constantly check my email and everything else. Lately, it's been horrid. I could probably say I have not checked in probably a better part of a month. Shame on me, completely shame.
Oh, the Manning Up Smart email.
Yeah, the Manning Up Smart, email account. So I need to get back to that, because I do know people are involved. They want to get information, and I just haven't been able to respond.
Speaking of that, so the first guy asked, Maurice Levy, can you do private coaching sessions?
We were just talking about
that. That's
to be honest, I can. I'm just completely not set up for it right now.
Okay.
That probably should change. But when my fear is that I start focusing in on the coaching element, because there's a monetary incentive, as opposed to writing, podcasting, doing everything else. And I hate to say it, my time is at such a premium. I've got a complete profession that dominates my attention, between that and sleep and trying to recover and having a family life. But I need to reinvestigate that, because I think there's a real connection. If I want to make a change, I have to make it one-on-one with individuals. Otherwise, it's just information. So that does need to change.
Helps.
Yeah, it does.
You get a lot of individuals watching every day, hundreds. This one was for me. Anthony, do you align yourself with the Ayn Rand, the Fountainhead, or Sun Ran, Atlas Shrugged? I'm not sure what Maurice is asking here, but I'm a huge fan of Ayn Rand. I consider myself an objectivist. Sometimes big objectivist, sometimes small objectivist, depending on what the fuck's going on at the current time. So I'm not quite in Greg's camp. He's like even beyond that.
Well, he's really dedicated to that.
Yeah, he's really dedicated.
He's really dedicated to that.
I think a lot of his philosophy actually goes into subjectivism. That's a whole other fucking topic.
Yeah.
But I'm an objectivist of some sort, and I take the philosophy seriously, take the book seriously, I take her life seriously. The camera, blah blah blah. This is kind of a long one. I don't know if we'll get into that one yet, about regaining frame or something like that.
You're grabbing the wheel.
Let's see what else is there.
Actually, probably, if you want to kind of direct that, I'm my talk coming up in.
Okay.
Is quite honestly, I'm going
to 21 convention, 2017, 10-year anniversary.
I am going to include a complete section on that. That very well may be kind of the title of the talk. Is whose relationship is this, anyways?
So owning the relationship, holding
the relationship, holding the frame, and kind of in small part, I was talking to one of the guys, and this is where it's stemming from, literally a car ride back from Miami, talking about it. And, I don't know what people know or don't know until they kind of ask a question. And so the simple question came up is, something about who owns the relationship, or it's our relationship, or something along those lines. I'm like, are you mad? I'm like, you're out of your fucking gourd. And the gist of it is of if we look at from cold call approach, of not knowing the girl to meeting a girl to talking to her, initiating conversation, initiating 1,001 steps. Of all these steps, all the way up to having sex, making her your girlfriend, or initiating, say, well, hey, we're going to be in a committed relationship. How many of those overall did the guy initiate and own? Or 99 to 100% of it, right? Vast majority. and yet she owns 50% of the relationship.
That's fucking bullshit.
Are you fucking serious? You know, and the reality is like, no, I'm driving the fucking bus here. This is my bus. This is a route I'm going. I'm pulling over, picking up something I hate. You know, you want to come and go this way? You know, this is where we're heading. But, you know, and her job is to say, yeah, and support that endeavor, or say, hey, no, can you drop me off at the next stop? You know, ring the bell, and I want to be left off at the next stop. In some instances, you may have to pull the bus over immediately and let an ill-behaved passenger fuck off your bus.
Get the fuck
But
out.
your job and your role is to drive that bus. Interestingly enough, when you don't, women aren't happy.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
flat out fucking not happy. And there's a number of ways in which to say
Nothing turns women off.
So, you know, you kind of talk about that, but I think it also needs to be said in the context of a relationship talk, not just pickup or something else. And so,
well, these are all different degrees of the
publicly,
same thing.
I haven't talked about that other than some kind of, you know, minor elements, or, you know, maybe a blog post I think I've done, you know, you're the captain of the ship. You know, I think there's that kind of meme going on, or you're the captain of your life, you know, not just a relationship.
You see the author of your life.
Yeah, the author, you know, all that, you know, and I intend to sail the seas.
Well, yeah, by that you also mean that you're the author of any relationship you start up.
Absolutely.
You need to be anyway.
Absolutely.
And if you're not, you're fucked.
Yep. And dating should be an interview
What if I
process.
identify as non-cisgendered, you know, one of the 48 genders, one of the 47?
That's
I mean,
if I'm
what
not,
about that though?
Yeah, I'm not. If I, you know, and I hate to say this, I actually kind of know the LGBTQIA. The fact that I know it's QIA.
I don't even know what that is. I don't even know what that is. I live on the internet.
Yeah, it keeps going. Fuck? But isn't the B in LGBT bi? Meaning it's binary gender, so it doesn't discount the entire left.
There you go.
Don't bring it up. It's not rational. You know, you don't. You'll get stoned for that one.
Let's hit a few more questions. Is James Marshall going to be on the 21 Convention 2017? I haven't seen him written there as a speaker yet. It's possible still at this point, but I would also say not particularly likely. So I'll talk to James again. I talked to him all the time on
That's
Skype.
A shame, because I've always enjoyed him being. I thought he was always a stellar.
We talked about this in 2016 as well. Okay. So it's not like it just sprang up out of nowhere.
Right.
So between, you know, he has a lot going on in this business.
Yeah,
he's not just he's not just James Marshall. He's CEO of the Natural Lifestyle.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he has
a whole different beast.
Yeah, and it's big now. It's really blown up.
No, that's awesome.
So that's why I really wanted him in Miami, and he was him and Liam, because I knew that it's possible he wouldn't speak in 2017, at which point he would be back till 2018 or beyond. So I was like, we need to do Miami. He need you there, and he came. So possible, but not particularly likely. Also, because the speaking list is almost full at this point. We got a new speaker recently. Don't want to announce them just yet. 2 of them, actually. So we're pretty much capping out at this point, even though we're 4 months out.
And see, I don't even know the whole list. I know some.
I would tell you.
I'm telling you, the ones I know, I'm like, really? God, that's awesome.
So sorry about asking a random question. If you have time, can you talk about vampires? Wait, let's see what else is available first. Hang on, Amir. Is it okay to stay around them if you're aware of them, or can you make a connection with them? Oh God, this is tempting.
Which one is it?
Let me this one here. This one. So let me hit this. So there's a blogger I like named Carl Aristotle, and he runs a blog called Black Label Logic, blacklabellogic.wordpress.com, I think. And he has a saying about cluster B women, so women that are, you know, personality disorder, like Medusa and many others. He says those are the kind of women. I showed him a picture once of one I met downtown with Patrick.
Yeah.
And I could have fucked her, and I fucked it up because her fucking roommate, but whatever. But I knew she was cluster B the minute she walked in the door. The minute I looked at her, I got suspicious. The minute I talked to her, I was like, yep, she has personality disorder. And I stayed around, knowingly though, like he's suggesting. But I also came to the conclusion, talking to her, kind of mapping out what was going to happen, you know, over the course of the night. I was like, all right, if I fuck her, I need to get the fuck out of there the minute I'm done. Do not sleep there. Do not stay over. Be very cautious talking to her after the fact because of what kind of creature she is. So I knew what I was dealing with. And so Carl over at Black Label Logic says just that. Cluster B women are the kind of women, vampires, kind of women you sleep with, but don't fall asleep around.
Yes. Yeah.
I think
that is super.
Perfect.
No, that is absolutely super. And going back to your question, no, you absolutely can develop a connection with them. No doubt.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Be their victim. Be their best victim. Be a victim that has limitless potential to continue being a victim. And
you have to basically outmock them at that point. You have to out-manipulate them.
Yeah. And you know, I kind of talked about kind of the vampire. Obviously, you saw the video, and you know where I talked about it. And there's more to like vampire lore that kind of goes in on this. If you look at, you know, for example, Dracula and a couple of the others, or you know, where they tap in on it. You know, the old school vampires. The whole town was their herd.
Okay.
Okay, they just didn't go out and get victims. No, that was that they were harvesting from their herd. They had herd, and they were calling the herd. They were doing all these things. So again, they're very, very territorial about that. So you can kind of really go off on that. And again, for our purposes, a lot of this is symbolic, but I think there is a lot of natural symbolism and storytelling, particularly with these monsters, to give reference. Very much like Grimm's storytelling. A lot of those are all horrible.
A lot of what art does is dramatize real life issues.
Right,
absolutely. Which, in this case, vampires are very accurate to cluster B women with personality disorders.
Another one is ghosts. How do you exercise a ghost out of your life? You're like, holy fuck.
The ghost.
And I hate to say it, I kind of had one personally myself. I actually came across her with my current partner. And,
you told me.
Yeah, it just kind of popped up, and you gotta exercise
the ghost dicks of Christmas past for ladies. So moving on. What on earth are you talking about? Just word garlic. That'll keep the vampires. If only.
And unfortunately, some of them it's like a you can put garlic out, but virtue. But a lot of them will be then challenged by it.
Yeah. Okay. Exhibit A.
Yeah, and so you've got to watch that too.
Now, what this makes me think of too, though, is I wonder, and I don't know the story. I don't know the case as of yet because it's not that big. But my Medusa talk, my speech, if it ever goes truly viral. Right now it's like 45,000 views or 43,000 or something, which is a lot. But if it really blows up to like hundreds of thousands or millions, like a Nick Sparks talk, I wonder if that will repel vampires or just attract the fucking shit out of them. I don't know. I don't know.
It probably will.
And I don't know what I'll do.
Low grade, but the ones that have a chip on their shoulders that want to challenge, that do everything, I think it'll attract it. Yeah. And my thing is,
just what I fucking need.
I know. I just, and I know yours like being Harley Quinn. Oh yeah. But you sit down and go, she would have made a much better Elvira. But that's speaking to my generation, Mistress of the Dark.
Well, she knew who Elvira was.
Oh yeah,
exactly. She showed me her one time on TV. Yeah.
And again, another woman who's a natural redhead.
God. Well, you mentioned Harley Quinn, but really a lot of cluster B women are more like the Joker.
Yeah.
Harley Quinn, a lot of them are more Joker-like, but in Harley Quinn form.
Right.
So. Yeah, and when you'll see it too, they'll look like that when they're out. Let's get into some more questions. Sock, I spent a lot of time on your SMP map, sexual marketplace map. You should look at gravity wells as a model to describe the geography you mentioned. Creepy, awkward.
Oh yeah,
does this make sense to you?
Yeah, it actually does.
Okay.
We would talk about the further off on the lower end of either spectrum, whether it be in the friend zone or, for example, being a fuck buddy. It's only 1 or 2 notches until you're through the threshold. But the reality is to get past that is so much work. The gravity well is a concentration of mass that kind of keeps you in it, and you have to break free of that orbit. And that would be an outstanding example to kind of utilize. That being in the friend zone and kind of getting out is not sort of a simple thing. I talk about it as being a kind of a hill you have to climb over. Essentially, you are in a deep depression.
This might be a stupid question, but are gravity wells related to architecture or construction or something?
No, not at all. Actually, astrophysics. Actually.
Oh yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's a physics. Yeah, it's complete physics related.
Fucking bumblefuck Florida redneck over here. Will Europe become an Islamic continent in the next 30 years? I hope not.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, Europe has a tendency to go to massive wars. So I don't know what it's gonna look like, but
it's gonna be ugly. I could see potentially if they do nothing, but I don't think that'll happen. There will be pushback.
Well, how many world wars have there been in?
Well, it doesn't have to be a world war.
Yeah.
Serbo-Croatia was an exact,
in the 90s.
There is in the 90s. You want to look at it, and you're going to see ethnic cleansing, and you're going to see a political party get involved one way or another, whether they're elected or not, and you'll have people pushing communities and protecting their beliefs, their values, their territory, whatever it is.
I wonder
and it's going to be ugly.
If the Germans are just going to snap, because they are so guilt-ridden. I've been there, and you feel this when you're there. They talk about it all the time.
And I was raised in Germany, for 8 years. So and looking kind of back on it, it's kind of no wonder. The best of their youth died in World War I and World War II. They were killed off. The ones that kind of remained, what happened? And then they have to live through Reconstruction and everything else, and that plays on the national psyche without a doubt. And the amazing thing about Europeans is that they're incredibly nice up until the point they're not. and the more, unlike I think a lot of the I would say passionate countries, the Mediterranean, and so forth, like the Scandinavians, the Germans, the Gaelic cultures, is that, man, when they turn, it's cold blooded. You know, my mother kind of being Norwegian background, I can remember when my great grandmother died. She had two Boston Terriers that everybody hated. They were nasty animals. They really were. But my great grandmother's body was not cold yet, still warm. Took last breaths, dark, you know, came in. She's dead. She's gone. They prop her arms, get her right, and then the family was reaching for the dogs to go put them down. That fast.
Damn.
Within 15 minutes, those dogs were on the way to the vet to be put down.
Holy shit.
And, you know, just taking care of business. And when you get that sort of ruthless efficiency dealing with that, and a seriousness associated with it, it'll make the Holocaust look very blasé. Very blasé.
Yep.
And in many ways, I think you're going to see things go medieval, which is terribly, you know, I hate to say it, and I'm not promoting this, but it seems to be terribly appropriate. You have a medieval philosophy invading Europe, okay, with ideas that's not being challenged and countered appropriately enough.
You mean specifically that Islam is like completely incompatible with Western civilization?
And I'm not saying that Islam has not gone through a reformation.
Yep.
Catholicism has gone through its reformation, and it was bloody, and it was heinous, and it was horrible. But at the same time, at the end of it, we have the gifts of Western civilization as we know it. Islam has not gone through that.
Yep.
And whether it does or doesn't, it's going to come in conflict with the world that remains. The question is what will occur?
All right, let's sorry, fly going by there. Let's go to the next question. By the way, thank you guys for creating the 21 Convention platform. It came at a crucial time for me. Power to you, and you're welcome. Great listening. You two live. 18 taking the red pill reminds me of my transition to atheism. Funny how we spend efforts on learning. Imagine what we could be. Will Rollo Tomasi be a speaker at an upcoming 21 convention? From Dude What 212. Absolutely, he will be. He'll be speaking twice, 2 full talks.
Not upcoming. This upcoming.
Yeah, this coming year.
Yeah, this coming year.
Yeah,
the one that's coming up in September, he will be there.
Yep.
Yeah, that's going to be exciting.
That's his first major public recorded appearance.
That's
photos,
awesome.
videos. You guys can meet him, book signings, all kinds of stuff. So if you guys don't have tickets yet, get them right now at the 21convention.org. There's a link underneath the video and in the card at the top right to get tickets. And yeah, Rollo, by the way, has been, I think I told you in private before this, but Rollo has been absolutely very supportive of the convention this year.
Yeah, that's awesome.
He went,
that's cool.
I knew he would do a blog about it and stuff, but he really went out of his way to promote the tickets, promote the event, get the word out. And I'm like honored and like floored because I love his work.
Well, not only that, but he's had other opportunities to do something similar with some really big names and really big companies.
I don't know for certain, but I think based on conversation I've seen between him and Tyler and stuff on YouTube, I think Tyler wanted Rollo to come speak for RSD at some point. I don't know under what conditions or whatever.
Yeah, right. I wouldn't know either.
And
it doesn't take a whole lot to see two people talk.
Yeah, exactly.
They're fucked.
And I know RSD has done that before with some of our other speakers. I won't name names, but some health and fitness guys that were huge, and they actually said, "No, I only speak at the 21 convention."
No,
when it comes I was like, "Oh my god!"
And that goes to you, the quality of the event you produce, and then how you also handle the event and the speakers.
Yeah, deadly fucking seriously.
Yeah, right. Yep. No joke. So,
we're kicking ass with tickets, but even as much, no matter how good it gets, right? No matter how many tickets we sell, no matter how well the convention does, I'm always like, how do I make it better as fast as possible, as efficiently as possible, and super high quality as possible? So people think they think all kinds of shit, but really that's where my heart's at with it. Make the best product I can, the best service I can, kick a fucking ass with it. And that's why I invite speakers like you and Rollo to speak at it. I'll make the best event I can, no matter what.
And I can, a lot of guys won't know this. I can testify that very directly.
Oh yeah,
how you put yourself in, how much you put your
balls
just
deep,
self,
balls
yeah,
deep,
balls
no
commentary, yeah, completely. You put yourself at risk, and we've had that discussions where I seriously would advise you, hey, you need to scale this back. You need to really take this into context, and when you do this, I admire the fact that you are, but at the same time, you're putting the whole movement and the idea at risk every time you put yourself out there. And you need to be smart about it. And so it's really gratifying to actually see you get some legs with this one, and to really kind of see that ball moving forward. And I'm really hoping to see that take place.
I think it's going to.
Again and again.
Yeah, I think we're going to sell out, which at this price point is surprising. The price point we have, $14.99. Part of that was to fund the event properly, run the best event we can. Part of it too was so that I could set a hard cap on tickets, and then we wouldn't really hit it. We'd get close or whatever, ideally, and then that's it. It's fun. But I think we're gonna actually fucking hit that this time. Even if I expand, which I already have, expand the venue to both sides so we get twice as many people. We're still gonna fucking max out.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be fantastic.
It's crazy, yeah.
And the energy involved on that is gonna be just unreal.
Yeah, and it's like, what do I do? Up the ticket price more? Like I could, but
that's a problem and bridge across.
Yeah, it's like
I would really sit down and
we'll cross it when we get there. But it's like it's already as high as I can make it, I think, feasibly for the product. So we'll figure it out as time goes on.
Tickets to the hallways. I think there are a couple of guys that bring that up.
We'll get a hallway seating.
Hallway seating. Don't go to the real TED event, but just get the hallway seating.
Hang out by the bathroom. Just like you'll roll it, comes and take a piss. Hey, can you sign my book? Some shit. So, Dr. Jordan B. Peterson at the 21 Convention 2019. I am not opposed to that. I have tried reaching out to him. I think I found a few different ways I could do that, and I might do that. So I don't know if you watch his stuff at all lately.
No, I haven't.
Oh, he's a badass. Yeah, the red pill is all about him right now.
Okay.
He's actually he has some very blue pill ideas, but only specific to like dating and stuff like that. But outside of that, he fucking kicks ass. Yeah, great. Cool. He's a psychology professor, I think, up in Canada too.
Even better. Somebody that actually has a psych. That's the other part that we're always missing for the longest time is red pill didn't have any scientific background. It's like, try to get a degree in that. You can't.
Yep. Well, the thing about the convention though is that part of the platform is I invite speakers from many different fields, and many of those speakers carry PhDs, medical
you're
degrees,
absolutely
stuff
right.
like that.
Yep, you're absolutely
right. So it really brings, and they still speak, knowing these other guys don't.
And talk about really raises the platform based on it. I don't think they would speak if they didn't realize that you are doing a legitimate job presenting the information.
Yep. I think the thing, every speaker that's come, I think, recognizes, especially after the fact, like how serious the platform is and how professional it is. Right. And that's why they speak regardless of who else is speaking. Yep. So that marrying Medusa speech should go viral. It was a life-changing speech for many. Thanks, man. I live in Iran. Holy shit, that sucks. It does suck, buddy.
Wow. Damn. Didn't think we had reached there.
Yep.
And I was talking about Islam. That's great.
Let's actually back up there. So we'll take this question, then we'll round it out. We'll close it out. What is your personal view? I think he's referring to you here. Okay. Is the increasing promiscuity of society a positive or negative sign? I have my viewpoint negative, but I'm curious to hear your viewpoint perspectives.
Overall, I'm going to say it's a negative. I think there's some awesome benefits because in a lot of ways, this is a counter reaction to a lot of the chastity that was not appropriate. But if you look at the ratio of people trying to find happiness after having more than 20 sexual partners, it's very difficult. And there's a number of ways of saying it. You could say it's really difficult to keep the boy on the farm once he's seen the lights in Paris. And that's kind of an old school way of saying.
Well, let's specify this out. So you're saying boy on the farm, but this probably applies more so to women than to men.
And it does. And the interesting thing is that we know biologically there's ramifications to it. Neurological pathways, your expectations. So I don't think it's just necessarily this element, I'll just be happy or happy. I think there's
what do they call it? Eat, pray, slut?
Yeah.
Eat, pray, slut. Yep.
Is that there's some real significant challenges biologically for finding peace, about finding contentment in relationships that are not sexually based. And unfortunately, I'll talk about this too, is that most strictly sexually based relationships are doomed to fail because there's nothing beyond that. And so you're going to have to modulate that somehow and make personal choices.
Nick Sparks in his Why Falling in Love Sucks speech in Miami recently, just came out on YouTube. Everybody's been watching it, really good. He made a comment that always cracks me up because I'll go back in the video sometimes. I'll check like a certain spot, see how it's playing and stuff. And he says in the speech, in that Falling in Love Sucks speech, that you were there for him.
Yeah, absolutely.
He says
he was my roomie for
the whole time. Yeah,
which is awesome.
Yeah. So what did he say? He said people when they break up, they want to always say, this is very common. He's right. We'll be friends after we break up. And Nick's like, that's fucking ridiculous. He doesn't say fucking, but he's like, that's ridiculous. You weren't friends in the first place.
Right.
It was all sex.
Fucking,
100%. It's all about the
yeah,
fucking.
yeah.
You spent a shit ton of time together.
Right.
It was all about the fucking. You weren't friends anyway. So to your point.
Yeah, and a lot of it's going to be dealing with context. So we're taking one element completely devoid of any context.
Okay.
You know, and as an architect, I really believe in context in which you build or construct anything. And so if we're going to be promiscuous and everything else, what's the context of it? I was fairly promiscuous in my 20s. You know, how does that play out? For women riding a cock carousel, it can be very, very difficult. I think Rollo's talked about.
Yeah, you guys have the alpha widow concept.
Alpha widow. You have all kind of that, and that's very real.
Yep.
But we also don't talk about what men do. Is that we do have all these expectations, and I have a number of personal friends that are getting up in age, and they can't settle down on any one woman because they don't meet the expectations that all the others had formed as a composite, and he's miserable, and he's not satisfied. So I think there's some challenges there, but on the whole, it's not the nature of the sex or the sex acts that's the problem. It's how we approach it. What are we taking out of it? The emotional connotations associated with it, and what do we expose ourselves biologically in response to a lot of that, and that shapes a lot of behavior. The other is it's another for somebody to go out and thoroughly enjoy themselves sexually. It's another for somebody to throw themselves sexually at a large number of partners to fill a hole internally that they're trying to have an external response to.
I love you saying that was it God gave women a hole in their self-esteem and man the tool to fill it?
Yeah, I talked to stories where my God gave you a cock as to fill a hole in women's self-esteem. And there is something to that. But at the same time, women or God has given women a vagina to embrace men. In a very real way. That's a first thought I never kind of really bring.
This is a new one.
It's a new one. You know, so sometimes I got to coach this out. And the interesting thing is we're biological animals geared and designed for each other.
Oh yeah.
And right now we have a
social complementary.
Yeah, complementary. Yeah. And it doesn't mean we're equal. It doesn't mean it's fair. God knows life isn't fair. There's a tremendous inadequacies.
Well, the sexes aren't supposed to be fair and equal.
No, they're not.
Supposed to be complementary.
Yeah, complementary.
That's different.
And as a unit, they function very well. Now, we can talk biological drives, whether guys are truly supposed to spread seed over a larger number or fewer. I've talked about some of that, is that we tend to find that offsprings tend to do better when there's more investment involved. But you can overinvest, but at the same time, we can look at a lot of it. I was relatively assaulted recently when I reminded a woman who said she was a feminist, and was kind of throwing that out there with a chip on her shoulder, was that, I'm a feminist. What do you think of that? And I'm like, well, it's really awesome. I hope you really enjoy your tub of ice cream and cookie batter and your 20 cats and boxed wine.
And Sex and the City reruns.
And it wasn't just sort of that. I go, but let's look at a narrative arc. Your great grandmother survived and had children in very adverse times, and she goes, yeah, okay. And she had multiple children, most likely, not in every case, but most likely, kind of that narrative arc. Your mother, similar type situation, better off, had 2 children. You are going to end up having an abortion, 20 cats,
and a dog,
box wine.
Yep.
And you're telling
there's
me,
photos of this. I've seen memes.
I need feminism because. I'm like, are you kidding?
You need
feminism has been brutal on women.
Yeah, you need feminism to fuck your life up.
Yeah,
right.
If
you want to fuck your life up,
in many ways, it's not even so much feminism. I have a problem. Feminism is nothing more than the catch arm. It's a harvesting, reaping arm of socialism and communism. It's literally
Marxism with the skirt.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, and it's a tool. And it's so sold as philosophy. It's crazy how it's been embraced.
Well, the tragic thing is too, the consequences are permanent because biology doesn't give a shit.
Biology doesn't. Nature doesn't care.
If you miss your fertility window, you miss your beauty.
Yeah, you miss all that, and nature doesn't care. And lesser individuals are going to breed. And I think there's a common friend of ours that talks about this: is the future belongs to those who are engaged and are dedicated to it.
Yep.
And if you can't figure this shit out, knowing the resources, the information we have at our fingertips, that's taking place, there's something seriously wrong. I find it amazing that we can sit and I can talk to an individual and he say, I can't do this, or it's not possible. And I have to remind him, I spoke about it in one of the talks, is that we are standing at the edge of 3 billion years of evolution success to get to us. Act like it.
Yep.
You're telling me you can't figure this shit out. You just can't make that happen. And this 3 billion years of history ends with you. Your ancestors should be rolling in the grave.
This actually, there's a couple of Repeal guys I like Mark Baxter and then Rollo and a couple other guys too, of course. And they mention they criticize the enjoy the decline.
Oh yeah,
which,
yeah, absolutely.
Which I get.
I'll be at the pool. I'll be
I'll
poolside
just,
or whatever.
just watching it all.
Yeah,
go
I'm just
down.
gonna watch it all and write it down. I'm not that way, and I kind of get that. I'm not that way, and in all honesty, I kind of get it. And the reason why I got involved, when I talk about being virtuous because I wasn't virtuous, my involvement in all this was to improve my life, to find solutions for myself. So, you can see my early talks, particularly like the talk I did in Orlando, the initial one, then Austin, was me kind of going through the evolution of a lot of these things, of having very, very real concerns about marriage, about law, about politics, our culture, and saying, man, at my age, at a certain point, I'm going to have to decide whether I'm truly going it alone, fuck you, I quit. Whether it's MGTOW or some other element, and I can guarantee I was not going to become blue pill. I was not going to just sort of give myself up and kind of do it.
Well, yeah, because once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah, you can't unsee it. But at the same time, I wasn't willing to go back. And a lot of people, and I know I couldn't go back home. I couldn't crawl back in that cocoon. So that wasn't for me either. So the only question is, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
And if you do nothing, you'll just float along, and life will determine it for you. In architecture, there's kind of a nasty but true response, is that if you don't provide a control joint in a building material, where a natural break because of the building, things move. If you don't put one in where you want it, the contractor will. And should the contractor fail to do that, nature sure as shit will.
Yep.
And you don't want nature doing that for you. I believe in this element of manifesting your own destiny, of controlling. It's not just going to be handed to you, but seizing it and striking out on your own, putting yourself out there, and controlling it
and preparing to preparing, not preventing.
Yeah.
To take on life.
So my blog is based on that. My talks are based on that. The Miami talk was the first time I talked not necessarily about myself, but to the generation primarily that was doing this, the millennial generation, and trying to find the linchpin to the sexual marketplace. What is it? And where it can be found? What things can
and what is it?
Quite interesting. It was a
I know
it was a Venn diagram,
question,
and a Venn diagram is when you take two spheres and put them together. The overlap is probably what they share in common, but it goes to a belief that major issues in our life can't be resolved by one discipline alone. It requires two, because if one discipline could do it, it would have already been solved. It's just a technical issue. And an issue with the sexual marketplace, we have multiple factors come in, and we have the individual at hand, their generation, their viewpoint generationally coming in. So as a millennial, what does that mean? And they get disparaged greatly in our society, which is inappropriate. That's a reflection of the baby boomers. Okay. And shame on them. And that's projection now. Okay. And so, but the millennials aren't taught that this is projection, but they're getting abused.
Millennials too, I'd say, have yet to be able to prove themselves. We're still really young.
But it's not their time yet.
It's
and that's absolutely right. Yeah, it's not their time yet, generationally wise. It's coming. And we know the range in which it always is, because it happens in every generation. And then the second is this element of biology. That we're men, women, and we're animals, and we have this biological nature to us, whether it's hypogamy and hypergamy, those things are at play. And then you have culture. And so the combination between those three, you're going to find probably your best source for finding a solution. And you can go to the fringes and probably find a close second. But if you're really looking for a linchpin, it's going to be kind of in the combination of those three. But ultimately, it's going to be up to the individual to find their linchpin in that area. And that's something that they need to kind of look, analyze, and determine. So that's what that talk was about.
Good.
Which, by the way, really, in all honesty, probably should be the second book I work on.
Okay.
Yeah. So
look forward to it. Look forward to it.
Finish the first one.
We'll have Krauser do a review on both.
Well, God, that'll be awesome. It'll be a thing. Well, I'll have to meet him at a bar with.
We'll get him. We'll probably have him as a speaker in 2018.
No, that'd be fantastic. I would really welcome the opportunity to see him.
So one of the final questions we got is thoughts on the TV show Vikings and its depiction of masculinity and femininity. I'm not familiar with it.
Oh, I do. Yeah.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, I have to. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Vikings. I love it. Yeah. I actually really love the show. Okay. Interesting. You have take the Vikings. That show, absolute ruthless masculinity. A culture is seeped in it, and that's the hotbed for feminism.
Oh, Sweden.
Yeah, it's now the rape capital of the world.
Yep.
You know, or I mean, that's probably not true. It's the rape capital of the Western world. We don't have stats everywhere else.
Yeah.
But yeah, remarkably that they went from a really peaceful, technologically highly cerebral, educated group that embraced that. Now, we can also talk about the dynamic you don't see there associated with it, and something I know we've talked about briefly is in Vikings, you don't have a democracy. You have a absolute patriarchy in the form of monarchies and everything else that goes down through that. And women don't have a vote. They can prove themselves and be seen as equals, but they, by God, have to perform as equals. And you have a major character that's doing just that.
Reminds me of what Trump said. Some woman asked him during the campaign trail, are women going to get paid? What are you going to do about women's equal pay? And he's like, well, if you work this hard, you're going to get paid the same.
Big enough.
Just shut it down.
And it's in my best interest to make sure that happens.
Yeah.
But what you also see in Vikings, in particularly Scandinavia as well, is that as soon as women got the vote, within, I think it's 15 to 20, 25 years in general, you start seeing socialized policies being enacted. And because they have a different interest based on biology, that's straight playing out.
Well, their needs and their
needs
the focus
and
is
else.
security and safety and shit.
And by the way, in a number of ways, Scandinavian women have been very, very good at controlling the women or the men that they mate with, and that has affected policy and politics.
Yeah, they're all wearing pink pussy hats.
Yeah, fantastic. That's awesome.
It's funny looking back on it that we had the convention there. I didn't think much of it. I just knew somebody. The only guy I knew in Europe at the time was in Sweden.
Right.
I was like, oh, we'll just do it there. I didn't think much of it. I was already, hostile towards feminism at that point, but not as aggressive as I am now.
You were before they were really even aware of it, before anybody was getting banned, I think.
Yeah, it was 2010.
Yeah, so I think if you went now, I think you would have a huge issue.
Yeah,
I think you would. It would be very difficult to even host an event there.
Yep. I'm even worried about doing the convention again in Australia, in Sydney.
Okay.
Because it's a country now that's gotten more. The anti-feminists and the guys like that haven't had a lot of success, I think, as of yet in that country.
Yeah.
So I'm worried now if I go there and bring red pill speakers, then we'll get fucking banned.
Yeah, you very well may.
Yeah, just like a couple of I don't know, Julian Blanc and a few others got fucking kicked out.
Yeah, but I think in many ways they were intentionally doing it, which is unfortunate because they kind of poisoned the well.
Yep.
And I kind of that goes kind of some of the stuff that we're talking about for the future of the 21 Convention, 21 University.
Yep.
That I think we'll be discussing in the near future.
On our joint, so people don't know this, but me and Sock are doing a joint presentation at the 2017 convention.
How about that?
Yeah, together. So it's something I've been working on in secret with Sock and a few others over the past since 2014.
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, we've
3
been talking.
years.
It's been a slow evolution towards it, but it's been consistent.
Yep.
And if you know anything about Anthony, don't get in the way. You either get on board or you don't, but just don't get in the way. And this is one in which I'm telling you, I'm on board for.
Yeah, this is a good one to get on. This is a good train. This is a dream train.
Awesome.
It's a dream train.
It really is.
Yeah. I actually took that comment from you, though, by the way, in your interview, and I put it in my speech.
Which one?
The Miami talk.
About
Anthony being a young punk.
Get out of the way. Future, I thoroughly expect you to be up on the space station or do something from the space.
We'll see. I'll hit up Elon Musk.
It may not be in my lifetime, and I'll be totally cool with that. But with commercialism and everything else, I could see you host an event up there.
Moon or something. Yeah. I'm not opposed to it.
Even if you're orbiting, I think, but. Yep. And to be honest, that is more symbolic of anything else. Is that I don't think a lot of these ideas are going to be combined. And when we talk about, for example, millennials and kind of that generational purpose, the millennials very much are coming to their age. That they are going to start taking the lead in a lot of this stuff culturally. And so when we talk about being barred from Sweden or Scandinavia or Australia, I thoroughly believe the first, and it's a U.S. thing, freedom of speech is going to be probably central to your generation.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Feminism,
it already is.
The issue with Islam and compatibility with Western civilization, those sort of questions is very much going to be carried by the brunt of your generation.
Yep. Look at someone like, do you follow Paul Joseph Watson at all?
A little bit here and there.
Yeah, he's a young guy, but he's got a million subscribers now.
Yeah.
900 and something thousand. He's fucking crushing it.
You talk about ideas and carrying weight and the ability to produce. I know a long time ago I talked about the power of the Gutenberg press of being able to, the first thing they printed was the Bible, to go for the Reformation, to literally bring the word of God to man without an intermediary of the church. And so the internet is doing beyond that. It's not just the power of a tweet, but so much more. The fact that we're having an hour-long discussion about any number of ideas.
Yep.
Terribly powerful.
Anybody in the world can watch us right now.
New media.
You can be in fucking New Zealand watching this right now.
Or literally in Iran. I think, what was it?
Someone's from Iran watching
this.
Yeah.
Crap.
Instant too, man.
I'm still surprised by this.
Well, it's a 30-second delay. Other than that,
30-second delay. Yeah.
Other than that, which it's not even necessary. I mean, they could get rid of that if they want. But we'll take one more question. We got a cool one in here. With yes means yes, how risky the college environment and court system is for men when it comes to false rape allegations. How can men properly protect themselves when pursuing their dating goals? That's a big question.
You are seriously screwed in a very, very real way.
Well, literally, obviously, in this case.
Yeah, but it's a really serious issue because it's not so much that she said yes at the time. Women are given credence to change their mind and still hold true in court. There's no requirement for facts. There's no requirement for evidence, and you will not be treated fairly under the court of law. I talked about this in several ones. The Tampa talk, I talk about Emma and her, the mattress girl, with some of the stuff that was taking place then. And that has not changed. It's going to get worse. We're seeing a little bit modifications, but on the whole, it's still terribly, terribly at risk. And this is going to sound horrid. I used to tell guys to be very explicit and make women say the words, we are going to fuck, or something to that effect. So there's no misguiding that. But that doesn't hold up anymore. And so I think it's really kind of come is that you almost have to, and unfortunately technology has been able to provide this very directly and very, very economically, interestingly enough, you're going to need to film your sexual exploits, film and record for your fucking protection.
Depending on the state, this could be illegal.
Yes, but it's also how it's used. Now, the fact that you get this for yourself and for your protection, and you store it and archive, and that's it, and you don't publicize it, I don't know if there's anything illegal there.
Depends on the state.
Now
there's wiretapping laws.
There's wiretapping.
It's complex.
But at the same time, there's this issue of why is this on your, again, whose relationship is this? Why is it on your issue when you're at risk? For example, a woman sits down and says, I has no problem saying, I think you might be a sexual predator. And it's incumbent on who? The guy or the chick to make sure he's not a sexual predator. It's incumbent upon the perpetrator.
It's guilty.
So let's reverse the roles. Now, she is in a position of being the perpetrator and the guy being the victim. Whose responsibility is it? Still the guy's, right? I don't think that's right.
That's not right at all.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, you better have those discussions up front. You're taking a hell of a gamble.
What I can add to this too is that what a lot of the top pickup guys now are doing that I see in these different groups and stuff is that one of the things they do, for example, is they get follow-up texts. So they'll get a very clear, written textual confirmation that the sex was good, that it happened, that they liked it, that they want to see you again, anything like that. And sometimes you gotta really fish it out. If you don't get it right away, they'll fish it out. They'll work on it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 texts, however many it takes. Even though that might be hurting, your long-term prospects with that chick, you need that or you want that.
And I would say, put that in front of the sex. Make sure you have those texts before it goes down, because trying to get it afterwards, it's like trying to, I did work for Anthony architecturally, and I said, here's our work, and he goes and builds this stuff. Me trying to get paid for the work I've done before I've handed him the instrument of exchange of service, it's always pennies on the dollar. You don't want to be chasing after it, because then you're also looking at it as a perpetrator, as you're being aggressively pursuing an answer. She felt pressure to answer in that particular way. So I'd rather have it done in advance, have her say it, have her record it, send a nude selfie, send something like that, all those sort of things. And
get some nudes.
And quite honestly, and here's the crazy part. Having filmed a number of my exploits, sometimes
do you not respect women? Suck.
Not only that, I found that they actually, in some case, really performed better when there was a camera present. They knew there was a camera present. Without a fucking. But that's also kind of the nature of the people I was engaging in. Freaks that were totally down to make sure that they're, don't show my ass from this angle, show it from this one, and not only that, and so there's a lot of that shit. They really do. They really do.
I want to add this too. Losing train of thought here. Losing train of thought. Oh yeah, be careful about the woman you sleep with. So that's like, that should go without saying, like, women have personality disorders. Some guys don't really know that. I didn't get that for years. The prevalence of that and the severity and danger of that. But even once they get that, even women who don't have personality disorders can still be dangerous and cause massive damage to your life. So if a chick you're interested in banging, guys, is not, if you have any kind of doubts, just get the fuck out of there. Just get the fuck out of there. It's not worth it. It's not worth it.
In many cases, I think there's an analogy of the genitalia being like a weapon. This weapons control. In the Marine Corps, this is my weapon, this is my gun. Bringing up like kind of current events. A holster and a cock. Treat your dick like it's a weapon. Or a firearm. It's all good to whip a firearm out every once in a while in polite company, but know when it's appropriate. Everything else, know good weapon handling. All those sort of things. Make sure it's clean, functional. We're kind of being facetious, but the reality
well maintained.
Well maintained. But you do want to make sure that you're engaging a target. So for example, any sort of shooting with self-defense is know what's beyond the target, know what you're getting involved with. You're going to take risks.
You're responsible for it.
And be responsible for it. We used to always kind of worry about either diseases or children. Those now aren't the big threat. It's your incarceration. It's your college career. It's your entire life can be absolutely slandered with no recourse. And so, for example, you look at the Duke lacrosse images where the case where they were accused, their careers were destroyed, the sporting event was destroyed, and it was false. And it
eventually came out they were exonerated.
Completely exonerated. No recourse. And what happened to the woman?
Nothing. She probably got less sympathy, and then people forget about it.
And that's not the only case. And that one's kind of old, and it's going to happen again. It's just a matter of time. And a lot worse. Same things, with, for example, when we talk about parental rights. Why aren't hospitals? So, for example, local hospital here has a serious problem that 1 in 20 children are being given away to the wrong parent.
Damn.
Now, you aren't going to hear it said that way.
That's a high statistic.
Because they're not handing the baby to the wrong mother. They're attributing fatherhood to the wrong man. Same thing, 2 different stories. One you'll hear it, the other one you won't.
Yeah, that's a hell. That's a mind fuck.
Guys, and this is going to be another part of what I'll talk about in this coming talk, is about controlling your own hypogamy.
Well, I've even read stories about, recently stories even too, that how men are denied paternity tests after the fact.
It's illegal.
In the interest of the children.
Yes.
In the best interest of the children.
Best interest of children, right. Like right now in this state, I cannot run a paternity test without a signed authorized release from my partner.
That's crazy.
That's wrong.
That's wrong, yeah.
That is absolutely wrong. But, equality, ladies.
Yeah. Well, this is why I think, I don't know if it's Roller or someone says it in Red Pill, but justice is a masculine virtue. It's not a feminine virtue.
Yeah, absolutely.
They don't value it.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, they'll follow along, maybe.
When it works in there, and then they'll cry.
In their favor.
They'll cry when it doesn't. And by the way, that is a plea not to virtue, but to a man's virtue. They're not exhibiting virtue when that takes place.
To my point a minute ago, too, though, guys, I'm not that old, but I'm older than some of you watching this. Sock is definitely older than most of you guys watching this. Yeah. Definitely. As older men, a little bit in my case, definitely in your case, if a chick is giving you any kind of red flags, even for a one night stand, get the fuck out. You might risk it with cluster B if you're crazy as shit like I am, but even that is dangerous. So any red flags, man, just get the fuck out.
There was one that kind of brings up right now because it's so relative and to the day. There was, I guess, an image going viral, some chick's mugshot. And it's not that she had all these tattoos on her throat and fucked up things and just fucked up dye job. And you just look at her and go, this chick's strung out. No, it's that the fact that she had her eyeballs fucking tattooed. Okay.
What?
Yeah, and this is her mugshot. No, that's not the amazing thing. That's not the amazing thing about it.
That's actually possible?
Yeah. Can you imagine that shit? Yeah, I've got issues with eyes because my profession requires it. The idea of any, a needle or somebody's finger, like if you start putting your finger, I'll get really upset. Yeah, it's just, it's kind of first like, I know you are. Break that shit.
Let's test it. Let's fucking find out.
So, but that's not the crazy part. The crazy part is this chick was luring some guy. She mugged this dude, stole his wallet, stole his credit card, and she had the audacity to call the dude back to hook up with him, or supposedly for him to hook up with the chick that just mugged you. Okay, only to get jumped a second time when her and her boyfriend are there.
I can't say I'm surprised. So nothing surprises me anymore.
Part of this didn't this guy see coming? And and I look at it and go, this chick gave every appearance of being an absolute fucking vampire. If you sat down and said, here's a modern day vampire, boom, monster.
Let's dig into this for a minute. So one of the things that I've realized since Medusa and then reading about other cluster B women is that a lot of the times they're going to disguise red flags in the form of green flags. So,
Yeah.
which really sucks. But you,
I know.
you need to be aware of
You
this.
need to be aware of it. Yeah.
You mentioned tattoos.
Yeah.
So Medusa, a lot of people don't know this, had no tattoos ever.
Right.
And in the end, she had a temperate henna tattoo. But, the last week or whatever. No, after actually we broke up, she got a henna tattoo. So she never had any tattoos. This was not obviously so pure, pristine, pale skin, which I liked a lot.
Right.
But what was this revealing? I thought this was a green flag. Good, no tattoos. Tattoos are for bad girls. I don't want to be around that.
Right.
Yeah. All this was narcissism. She had absolute obsession with her appearance.
Right.
To the point that she wouldn't get any tattoos, not out of a pursuit of like a clean appearance, but absolute maniacal, legitimate NPD narcissism. So that's a red flag.
You got to understand.
It looked like a green flag, but as a red flag,
understand the context. So
context,
and that's why I talk about guys. It's not
that's tough. That's hard.
A fucked up relationship or past. What has she done with it? Okay, well, how's the context?
Yep.
Tattoos. Now, I hate to say it, tattoos on you. I don't like. Daddy, that's
I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I don't like it at all.
I like it done well. You just but there's so much.
I can tolerate a few small ones.
I mean, this chick had shit on her eyebrow and something on her head.
God,
all the fucking signs were there. And she violated this guy, criminal act, and you still thought she was worth getting some ass. You sit down and you take one step back. One, you want to slap the guy. The other is like, oh my God, this is the state of mankind with some guys that are so isolated, so desperate for any sort of connection and everything else. They would put themselves at such obvious risk. And you just sit down and go, and that's where having a group of guys, whether it's a 21 convention or the guys on the board or any of these things, to sit down and say, hey, look, to come back, this guy had no support network. And I have no idea who this dude is. I just saw it. I'm like, oh my God, I unfucking believable.
Yeah, I'm always thankful I could reach out to people who are more knowledgeable than I am.
Yeah, unbelievable.
You mentioned that I have a hell of a social network. Sometimes I don't appreciate what it is.
No, you've created that. And not just sort of created by, hey, I wanted to go meet these people and everything else. Yeah. You provided value in return. And what I find really remarkable is the age disparity in some of these cases. Like, these are not necessarily peer related millennials.
Rarely are they.
Rarely are. I mean, and there's a number of them. Don't get me wrong, there are. But it is really, you've been able to forge deep, just reasonable connections and relationships with guys much more older than you are, mature, developed in their fields, that are seeing what you're doing. And by the way, that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
Okay, that's absolutely the way it should be.
I'm trying to learn from people older than me.
Yeah.
I don't credit enough Right Hand Man for this, but his talk at the 21 convention in 2010 was that I'd been thinking about this before the fact, due to him and Top Layer and a few other guys, but mostly him. His talk, and he said, "Don't get married." At some point, tread extremely fucking carefully, is what led me to the idea of private marriage before even figuring out that such a thing already existed. I was like, this guy's on something. It's not just him. It's every other guy in his 40s and 50s. It's just like, stay the fuck out of it. So it led me to generate the idea of, and it wasn't perfect. Obviously, how this worked out was a fucking disaster anyway. But I saved myself a shit ton of headache and financial and legal headache and trouble.
You took a leap. You had a belief. You were willing to take that risk. Put that in comparison and contrast to what I did.
Okay.
I saw it, wanted it, worked around it, and refused to pull the trigger. Okay. And in many cases, thank God I didn't, because I was with the wrong people for a number of host reasons. And so, the fact is that it's taken a lot for me to do that, but it's taken 30 years of bachelorhood kind of working through this shit poorly until the last 10, in which I really kind of turned into it for a number of personal reasons to kind of really kind of work it out. And there's no telling that I could fall flat on my face tomorrow. There's absolutely no doubt.
Yeah.
Literally, I was at an event on Friday with a bunch of professionals talking about it, and there's this former coworkers kind of explaining to a friend of hers kind of some of the stuff I do with you, and they're like, she wasn't really kind of getting it. And she's like, well, and then I start bringing up small stuff, and they're laughing.
You just sound like a misogynistic.
Yeah, it's really kind of weird when my professional and personal life kind of blend that way, especially when it's involving this stuff.
Okay.
And so I ended up showing pictures of my baby, great fucking photo, and I just said, look at this photo, and I'm particularly proud. I'm stupid over. And so I'm showing this gal this, and I go now, and her mom's literally right across the way, and I said, Mom literally could not imagine living a day without her child. And everyone's like, yeah, I get that. I go, but you know what? At a drop of a hat this afternoon, she can tell me I'm an asshole. You're going to leave the house you designed and built and paying for. I'm taking the kids, and you're on your own, and you're going to be lucky. You're going to have to get a court order to see your daughter, this little girl, every other week. at a drop of a hat.
If you had a marriage license.
If I had a marriage
some of this
license,
would still,
yeah,
even without a marriage license,
even
would
without
still
a
be
marriage
involved,
license,
yeah,
but
but
and in this particular state, things are getting a lot better. But you
Yeah.
sit down and say that's the general nature of what I kind of generally talk
Well,
in part.
a mutual
about.
friend of ours recently was saying to me, because he's watching a few of these different shows online and stuff, Tom Likas, he's in
Yeah,
there,
yeah. Mhm.
that marriage is basically, specifically the legal elements of it, is nothing but a money and power transfer to the woman.
Yeah,
At this
yeah,
point.
with that,
It doesn't do anything else.
Well, and we know in a lot of cases because communists and socialists will have actually run the studies and they've actually kind of promoted the think tanks for a lot of this, is that if you look at the way in which communities keep money involved, like a particular community group, how the money's spent, where it's kept, and how it gets reinvested into itself, and kind of track that history, women immediately spend what they get. Or
Okay.
there's very little long-term thinking investment-wise. It's
Yep.
much more shorter-term spendthrift, and it's emotionally based economy as opposed to a rational long-term one.
Well, for thousands of years, they haven't had to accumulate value and
And
capital.
the other one is that they're not tasked with those responsibilities,
Yep.
and even when they do, they haven't been held accountable to their failures.
Yep.
For example, we can improve the child poverty rate, getting millions of children out of poverty if we stop giving default custody to mothers. That single fathers living and holding full responsibility of children on their own without any sort of alimony or child support,
Yep.
as opposed to mothers. It's better on the father. Well, we can say, well, because they've had an education and jobs and everything else. Well, we can say that, but women are graduating with more degrees.
Yeah, that's right. More in college.
That argument's not holding water.
Yeah.
They make differing choices, and when we hold women accountable to the choices they make, they don't like it.
Yep.
And that's not just.
Yeah, they don't. I mean, all of a lot of femininity
that's
is offsetting responsibility.
So I kind of had to explain to her why I was kind of put on some governmental watch lists and some of the issues, and she couldn't understand. And then I kind of say something.
Well, I'm sure speaking this convention won't cause that at any point.
So. No, not at all. Just or some of the shit that comes out of my mouth
radical,
on anything. That's and anymore though, anymore it'd probably do me a world of good if something just kind of really did blow up that way. It's just I'm subservient to the debt I hold, the job I have, and everything else. But a lot of that, you sit down and go, anymore. I'm becoming less afraid of it.
Okay.
It would force some issues. It would force some hardships. But if that's your counter to an argument, that's a form of violence. And in essence, when you have to act in violence to get an argument won, you've lost the idea.
Let's kind of end this out. We're a little bit over time. Let's end this out on a little bit gentler note. You mentioned me being friends with and learning from older men. That's what I was hitting on too. That I've done that as much as I can. It's with some success, I think. Some failures too. I've done this and that, but some good successes. But speaking of older men, let's talk about Andrew the Private Man.
Yes,
a mutual friend of ours died a few weeks ago. A few of the speakers as well knew him.
Yeah, knew him. And that's always kind of alarming.
An alumni speaker as well.
Alumni speaker. And what it's not just at his death. I think was alarming because people kind of drop off. Yep. This is a man who saw it coming, knew he had terminal cancer, knew he was fighting it. Yep. And then the question becomes is how does he live his life? What does he do with his time?
Yep.
How does he handle that? And that is I couldn't imagine kind of going through that. He always kind of joked about it being kind of a scheduling issue, but if you were close enough to him to actually talk and really kind of speak, that was a lot of it was a front for your benefit in a lot of ways, but it's also how he handled it. And so in the Miami convention, we're able to sit and talk for extended periods of time.
Hey, we have it on video.
Yeah, no, in video. I'm not even thinking of that to be really
beyond that.
Beyond that. And as much as I enjoyed that video, and that's really kind of some of the discussions you see in the hallway, because it literally was a hallway conversation sitting at a table having to be filmed. We had more we're exactly that, much longer, while we're playing chess, while we're having some drinks, while we're talking in the lounge, and just those nights were extremely long because of the discourse that was taking place.
Yep.
And so for me, it was really kind of powerful to sit down, know he's dying of cancer, have that time with him, be able to discuss that, seeing him with a bunch of these other guys, also realizing that this is going to be carried forward.
Yep.
And he had an integral part of that. And for me, he was an early voice in the internet. Before I even really kind of understood what blogging was or that whole concept, I'm like, what? You kind of know he was one of the voices I was attracted to because he was older. Okay. He had a completely different sense of perspective and frame and job and mortgage and all those sort of things that I was already we had the similar interests and backgrounds. And so a lot of the stuff resonated because of his context. And so in that regard, he was a light amongst some really early leaders and developers in the industry. And he was more interested not just in pickup or women. He had a more holistic approaches to the quality of your life. But he literally at a very late stage in his life completely transformed it.
Yep.
You
Yeah,
know?
it's really rare.
Yeah, really rare. And if you talk to him, if you're around him, he's got a contagious personality.
Yeah.
This is not some bitter, shriveled man who's angry with the world and is going to go out. So, for example, you brought up Tom Likas, you know, and I would
say,
who
he is.
I know he is. And here's a guy who's found a niche and is marketing it as playing to it. But I think very much a lot of his stuff is very better. He was very harmed.
Okay.
Where with Andrew, you knew he was equally harmed in many ways. You know, you don't go through that without being hurt. I don't know what monetary damages or anything else, but clearly this guy had multiple marriages, and you don't go through that without some damage. You get knocked up. But it didn't hit his sense of place and identity and personality. Here was a guy who was terribly positive about life. And had to kind of explain to a lot of people, yourself and mine included, is that he's ending his life and he doesn't want to get engaged in deep relationships because of the limited capacity for fulfillment.
Yeah.
And so you kind of have to honor and respect that. And you just sit down and say, for me, it was very moving to be able not only to spend time with him, to see him, because I had met him previously, because he put on an event previously. Some of the guys at the Miami event knew who he was, and then of course for his own wake that he hosted. So here you have the corpse at his own wake. Some guys flew across country to come down and see him that I had met previously. So that was a camaraderie amongst his family, who had no idea of the second life of his.
He kept an amazing division between the two.
Yeah,
they really had
in
no
many
idea.
cases you had to, and that was a product of our time. 10 years ago, you couldn't do the things that we're talking about now. I would not be on film now 10 years ago because it would have affected my career without a doubt.
What's funny from my perspective, not funny, but interesting to look at, is that my whole adult life has been this.
Right.
So I literally don't know anything else.
Right.
Like,
but you're also not
as soon as I could, I did it.
You're not beholden to anybody.
Yeah,
that's the complete difference, and that's some of the things we should talk about in the conversations we end up having. Is millennials have a completely different sense of career arcs, education, and jobs, and how they do things. And I'm not saying it's necessarily you have to follow a single track, but you're a prime example of somebody who didn't follow the conventional track. That
not even close.
The things that are not holding you back, that hold guys like me, even though I'm older, more mature, are really significant. So you're given latitude and flexibility to maneuver and take up issues and promote causes that I simply couldn't.
This is interesting, because you get this, but a lot of people don't. It's interesting to look at. One of the theories someone had on Reddit, looking at the Medusa talk, they went through it and had these sent me a few things. And it's not bad. I think it's plausible, but I'm still skeptical. His theory was that Medusa used me, her main supply. She got any money out of me. She got a lot of sex out of me, along with millions, not millions, but lots of other people too. But I was like, what did she really get out of me if it wasn't money or anything like that? Was it emotional security? And maybe there's some of that. She has, all kinds of fucked up and stuff. But his theory was that she used me as like a normalcy kind of blanket for her life to appear more normal. But I'm like, wait a second, I'm fucking weird as shit. Like, I've done nothing normal in my life, my whole adult life. Like, nothing. Like, what do I do normal? Right. Nothing.
No, yeah, very little.
Like,
it's all over.
What are we doing right now?
I think, to be honest,
so
I don't know. I don't necessarily agree with that she was holding it down.
There might be something there. Might be something there.
It possibly could. I think in
maybe
ways,
maybe I'm more weird, and that would be the cover. I don't know.
It's that, but I think that by having somebody else by her side, it immediately gives cover.
Okay.
Is that you can explain things to her or from somebody else if she overstepped a line or something. There's kind of cover that we had there. But I think another one is, I would say she isn't independent. If you look at, and we're speaking very directly about a individual, probably very unfairly, without her presence, but I would talk to her if she was right here. No shame. Is that she went from one relationship to another in fairly short order. So people who are not dependent don't do that.
Yeah, super dependent.
Yeah, she's super dependent.
I mean, this is
narcissistic
supply means
she needs that stability. I would sit down and say she needs that anchor more than she would give credit for. And if you sit down and say, who's going to give credit, as far as being an anchor, holy fuck, there's no getting you off the ground. You're like kind of like Thor's hammer, like only Thor can pick that shit up and move it. Whether it's you projecting on an idea or anything else.
This is good. This is
yeah,
good there.
I think very much you anchored somebody who's very much lost and had been buffered or
this would speak
life.
to what Greg Swan said
Yes.
about being a moral compass that just could not be taken off course.
And I think it was stability. I think it was safety. I think it was security. All these very human things that I think she did not have in her youth. I didn't think she had in her childhood. And I know she didn't have in the choices of the other men she chose in her life. And of course, then what does she do? And the guy she chose this time, good luck.
Yeah.
Not a moral dude, not stable, not interested, but I
still doesn't have a clue he's dealing.
No, and that's not our problem. Man. That's not. I don't feel bad for him. He was more than willing to predatorily go after somebody else's.
I won't either unless.
And that was the attraction.
I won't either unless he ends up dead. If he ends up, I think that's.
I'm saying that's why
you're still. Yeah, see, you're
totally
beyond me.
I'm totally like, no, you get your ass gutted and robbed and killed and died. Tough fucking luck.
It's fucked up as it is. I know it's a possibility.
Yeah, and it very well maybe. God knows. But yeah, I just don't. It's unfortunate. I don't think he's not the end.
Yeah.
Unless something happens, I think it's a segue without a doubt.
Oh yeah, totally.
Totally.
It'll probably work out. They'll probably be together forever.
God, and good. And in all honesty, good for them. Get it off the street, no more damage.
Yeah, there you go.
And that's called containment. I'm totally good with death or containment. Get it off the street.
Get off the street.
Whether you're happier in hell, I'm not looking for justice. I don't expect justice. It's not going to be around. We learn from it. So I don't have this illusion of justice. There's no justice going to come out of that. You take that and make value out of it, and you clearly are.
Someone's asking some questions. Was Medusa the psychopathic chick that screwed the one guy over as he spoke about in his lecture, or is that a different Cluster B nightmare? No, that's Medusa.
That's she gets. Sorry.
I mean, you can also call Cluster B woman Lucifer's daughter as a common term. Medusa now is taking on pretty well, but I meant that specifically for her. Yeah. The M fit her first written name originally. I was like, this works good.
It kind of works.
Yeah, it works great. It works great.
I just kind of like the imagery of it, and I talked about it, how do you kind of get rid of vampires? Is you got to cut the head off. Yep. You got to excise it. Yep. When you know it, and that has it too. So.
Yeah, but Lucifer's daughter is another good one for generally speaking about cluster B woman. That one that was escorting prostituting on the side. Yep. Anyway, enough about her. Fuck that chick. Andrew the Private Man. Any last words about him? We'll talk about it. So I should mention too, the convention's dedicated to him this year.
Yeah, it will be.
Event.
The interesting thing is the outreach that a lot of people had for the idea. So. I am terribly impressed with not only the manner in which the guy lived his life, with his willingness, even late at life, in his position, not being in shape, not being particularly good looking. He was gifted with the same quality hair I do, and that's fucking awesome.
That's looking great, man.
I know.
You got to gel it up today, or
no? It's just a lot of manual labor at the house. But yeah, you sit down and say he had every reason to sit down and lay on any number of excuses he could have done. And he didn't. Both in his failures in life and successes in life, how he turned around and said, "I'm still alive. I'm still kicking. I'm going to improve my life," and did that. And not only that, shared that information, shared that wealth. He wasn't meager with it or meager with it.
I can attest to this too. That even I saw him on March 20th. That was the last time I saw him. So 2 weeks before he died, or not even.
Yeah.
And he was still high spirits then. Still laughing. Yes. I was still trolling him. I was gonna bring some gluten-free beer, which he fucking hates. I was like, when he picks him up, he's like, "Fuck you."
Yeah. I mean, here's a man who, dying of cancer, decides to pick up smoking.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, why not?
I go, it's gross, but okay, why not? What are you going to die from it?
Yep.
And so he did that, but he also faced his death remarkably.
I'd say so as well. Yep.
I don't know if I'll have the same courage. But where I leaned on him because of his blog posts and his advice on dating and women, I, without a doubt, will carry his example with me through life.
Yep. So
that I hope to God that I'm not a sniveling mess at the end of mine, that I can go into a long good night and be as admirable as he was. And that's what happens when you have really good men as an example. You carry that with you. And in many ways, I don't think it's necessarily a life or death thing. I can probably apply the same mentality to any number of hardships.
Oh yeah.
And so, yeah, in that regard, it's stellar.
Yeah, I can look at his death and my friend Curtis's death, my best friend
Right.
back in 2008 that died of cancer as well,
Yep.
at a young age.
Yeah,
But
very young.
both of them,
Yeah.
I was like, even at the end with him, you know, eating lunch with him, Andrew the Private
Yep.
Man down in Miami, I was like, this is a lot like Curtis. Like,
Yep.
he is keeping this mentality and this mindset all the way to the end.
Yep.
Nothing's taking him off that track.
Yep.
And I'm sure he's scared as shit, just like Curtis,
terrifying.
no doubt. Yeah,
And I'm not
fucking
saying the
terrifying.
man didn't have breakdowns, and I just don't know about it.
Yeah.
And even if I did, I would not hold that against him.
I wouldn't either. Yeah,
You can't.
That's completely fucking normal.
Are you shitting me? It was like, God. So, you know, in that regard, the 21 Convention has done that as well. And that's not a talk, you know, other than, you know, he gave a presentation, kind of brought it up, but that wasn't the nature of his talk.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's almost kind of a shame that
it is in a fundamental way. I mean, he gave the talk towards the end of his life. It was the best he could put together, and he did a good job.
Absolutely.
Yeah, especially given the circumstances. He said, hey, I'm going to die in a few months, but let me focus on doing this fucking speech right now for these young guys here in Miami.
And I would sit down and say the value of that presentation wasn't necessarily whether you like the presentation.
Exactly.
Or not. It's not the presentation.
It's in the band.
It's watching the man himself at that context in his life, doing what he's doing.
Yep.
I find that just stunning.
Me too.
Just terribly admirable, and something I was really proud to not only kind of partake in and be a witness to, but then had the awesome opportunity to talk to him about his talk and speak with him multiple times throughout that.
I got to say, like, I've never been prouder than of my little mousetrap I built, 21 Studios and 21 Convention, than to be used or leveraged by a man who's dying.
Right.
To immortalize himself in a way, which he specifically asked me to do when he last thing he said to me was make sure I live forever.
Yeah.
And I'm just
this
like,
is a man worried about his future and legacy, and his contribution to mankind is his measure of intelligence and wisdom, and is presented for free.
Yep.
You know, that was the other part is this isn't a man who had, you know, he may have gotten some paid for a little bit of coaching, but on the whole didn't have a business set up for this.
Yeah.
This was something personal to him.
Personal and intellectual. He's focused on ideas.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so for me, kind of in that same vein, that resonates completely.
Yep. You know, actually, one net out on this, and then we'll get going. I know we're way past time.
More. I'm so over time. It's unbelievable.
So I had a big pickup guy contact me today. I've talked to him before too about speaking at the event, and I'm like, I don't think it's going to work out this year. You know, maybe you can come and check out the event. Blah 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 blah. But he seemed fixated on the idea that, you know, being this badass in pickup, which he is. Yeah. That would be qualification to speak at the convention, and it's not necessarily so. It's not a criteria that I'm going by how many chicks you banged or whatever the fuck. Right. It doesn't matter to me. I'm interested in the ideas, which sometimes will definitely and directly correlate into you know, the speaker banging tons of chicks and then bringing lessons learned to the table from that.
Right.
But that's just one pathway to doing that. Rolo, for example, has been married for 21 years or something like that. I don't think he's banging a chick in 21 years, as far as I know, as according to his blog, from what I've seen. Right. So he's still definitely welcome as a speaker, independent of how many women he's banged recently. It doesn't matter to me. I'm interested in the ideas and what's right.
Yeah, and I would also say it's not just the lay count if you're talking pickup that's sort of criteria. Yeah. It's how well can you teach it? How much of a teacher are you a teacher?
Yep.
You know, and it's interesting. I've seen some guys that were phenomenal at pickup or any number of things. Whether it's pickup, and we just happen to be talking about that. Phenomenal about a narrow area of interest.
Well, the same
could
is
not
true
convey
in
that.
fitness
Could not teach that. Couldn't resonate. Yep. They weren't able to form that connection with people. Yep. And so, I think the speakers you have at these events are able to do that, and that's why they're so powerful.
Yep, exactly.
So, yeah, but if that speaker's listening, or here's a. Show up and attend.
Yeah, show up and attend. That's what I told him.
You sit down and go, you want to see what it's like, and talk about giving value before you take value. I was taught fairly early on in my professional career to do palm up marketing. You offer value before you solicit value. So for example, a lot of these networking events, everybody goes around exchanging cards. What can you do for me? Can you get what are you working on that you can put me on? And nobody wants that. It's just kind of I don't know. It's just tiresome. It's sleazy. It's just weird. And there's something completely different of finding somebody and finding out what they're interested in, providing value to that before you ask anything of them, and to one kind of measure that, and then you kind of get to understand each other based on those shared values or that relationship structure, rather than the exchange value that you were attempting before. And so I would sit down and say, for anybody who's honestly really wanting to come and talk, that has those sort of street creeds, that has a business, and obviously can provide value.
Yeah, no doubt.
Show it by coming up, not necessarily to brand or market. Obviously that'll occur, but to sit down and be literally an attendee at an event. I think there's something terribly powerful to that, because this isn't just a conference. It's very much a movement.
Reading through some comments here. Oh, someone said the YouTube entrepreneur in cars is an interesting guy. Seems to fit with your genre. He is a speaker this year.
Oh, really?
So Richard Cooper, from Richard Cooper from Entrepreneurs in Cars.
Yeah.
He's Red Pill aware and a huge advocate of it.
It's amazing how far that spreads.
Yeah.
I'm always amazed at a number of people in just so many different industries.
Well, so he's he's running a channel that has to deal with entrepreneurs in cars. He goes beyond that too, now doing video blogs and stuff. So he's speaking at the convention. He's super advocate of Red Pill. He loves it. He's your age too, I think, and somewhere in his 40s, I think. But he's not speaking on pickup or Red Pill or anything like that. He's speaking on entrepreneurship, business.
Yeah, bingo.
So super huge fan of that. But speaking, nothing to do with that, or maybe some, but very little as far as I know. So with that said, I think we need to wrap up.
Yeah, I need to get home. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Everyone, thanks for joining in on the live stream. Appreciate your time tuning in live. Those of you guys watching it later, thanks for watching the whole video, getting all the way through it. If you guys don't have your tickets yet, get your tickets to the 21 Convention 2017. Meet me, meet Socrates, meet Rollo.
Yeah, and when we say meet, it's more than meet. Meet and spend time with us. Yeah, it's really spend time and connect with us. It's gonna be awesome. I'm really looking forward to it.
Me too. So. I'm almost bummed out that I bumped it to September. I mean, it's going to be good that we're doing September, but I want to do it in July now, but I can't bump it back.
I mean, give you an idea how serious I am about it. I talk about balls eat, no condom, but I'm pretty much squirreling away half my vacation time.
No shit.
For these events.
No shit.
I believe in it that much. The connections there. I get as much as I give. For a lot of it, it's really true, and it's just something I thoroughly believe in. Just as a movement, as a cause, and everything else. And so, my office is aware of that. They're made very much aware. It's been an issue in the past occasionally.
You're the sock man. They got to get out of the way.
Well,
that's get out of the way.
Actually, interesting enough, I actually had a client recently. Kind of just brought that up on the side.
No shit.
Yeah, just really.
Shit.
And after a major meeting, I mean, you're sitting here going, and they go, "Should we call you Sock?" Wow.
Oh, that's
wow.
Rich.
I mean,
that's
that was just a stop, and they go, "My son listened to your stuff," and he goes, "I'm just saying." I get to work with you on a professional capacity, and my son wants to know. And I'm like, that's
badass.
It's so fucking cool. I don't know what to make.
That reminds me when the porn star got me down in Miami after I saw Andrew, when she found my lay report I wrote.
This is not awesome.
Yeah, she fucking trolled the shit, just like that. Trolled the shit out of me.
It's funny what kind of fame in that regard kind of does.
Yeah.
You talk about completely increasing value. And stuff that I still don't kind of get. You just sit and go. Occasionally it occurs, but every time it does, it just seems really odd.
Yeah.
I haven't been immersed in that area, in that culture for enough to it be kind of normal.
Yep. Soon. We'll keep getting.
We'll keep it in the lab. We'll keep it up. So.
With that said, thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Appreciate it, sir.
Thank you guys for showing up.
See you guys. Get tickets in the description beneath this video to the event. Meet me, meet Sock, do all kinds of cool shit for 4.5 days. Or get tickets in the card, top right hand side of the video.
Yeah, definitely show up. It is going to be one hell of an event.
Yep.
It really will be.
All right, guys. Good night. Roger. Peace out. Closing out the podcast.